Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gasdemup. We're going to start with a song for the ancestors. Give me a second. So, good day, Black Pentagrammers. Good day, everyone. Um, we are live. Um, Gassed them up and Jose, the Black Pentagrammers. We have Tan Zan with us today. Tan, how are you?
I'm good.
For
I'm
those of
good.
you who don't know, Tan is a genius. I mean, this woman is a mathematical genius, an engineering wizard. So we're hoping she can, if she likes us enough, she can be a member of this show. Who knows if her spirit likes us, right? So we'll love to have her as the as a voice on this show. So this is the Black Pentagrammers. For those of you who are joining us, we tackle things in terms of modernity and the Western system and the world we live in from an occult lens, identifying different occult things, and trying to use an Afro-centered approach to looking at things. So, didn't mean to overtalk you, Tan, but tell us how have you been, and what are your thoughts?
I'm good. I just got in and yeah, I definitely like the space. So yeah, I'll be joining more often. So lay the foundation and tell me a little bit about you. Call it yourself. You're the Black Pentagrammers. Do please expound. I'm still new, so you can't expect to just throw me in
No,
and
no, no, no. I'm actually emailing myself as we talk. But yeah, so no, it's basically like I said, it's a space where we Jose and I, because a lot of times, no disrespect to anybody else, a lot of the panels kind of get contentious. People are arguing, it gets argumentative, and I just wanted to create or we wanted to create a highly intellectual space from a theoretical perspective where people can, um, push ideas. Largely, of course, we're centered around occultism and the different things that happen behind the scenes and how that interplays with modernity and stuff like that. So that's where we come from with it.
Okay, interesting premise. Yeah, I like to find out about knowledge, past and present, and especially the past. I think that we have lost a lot of knowledge. Unfortunately, there's a lot that we knew that. Unfortunately, we have intellectual amnesia. So much has been lost to you know, to modernity, and it's time to unearth all those esoteric knowledge and see how we can use that to, to define our modern world because we have become faithless. Not that people don't have faith anymore, but they don't trust the power of belief. And I think that in the past, people did have a certain connection to powers that we have no idea about. So yeah, I'm interested in learning. It will be more a learning experience for me because I can't say I'm an expert in that, but I am interested in learning.
No, no, that's perfect. We have Jose, the other half of the pentagrammers, joining us. Jose, how are you?
I'm okay, man. I'm okay. Is the noise? Is it noisy? For you? Is it noisy for you? Because the neighbors are having a. It's the second day of a wedding, and there's a conversation going on in the garden where I am now. Maybe I'm. Maybe I'm. Maybe it's better that I leave this garden, and then
Yeah, if
we'll
you can
only
find a
have
little
the.
bit quieter spot, that's okay. I mean, we'll do best with what we're doing, so that's okay.
How are you, Tanzan?
I'm
I'm happy
good.
to hear your voice.
I'm good. Good to hear you too.
Are
It's
you
been a
guys
while.
familiar with each other?
A little bit. We have
From
been.
other shows. I've been calling Tenzan a fangirl of African Americans, but that's just jealousy. I like Tenzan.
I love everybody. So yes, on several occasions, whenever we are on the panel, I'm usually an apologist for them. So that's why he says that. But it's all in good spirits.
Okay, well, let's get it on.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read something, and then I'm going to talk about what the topics are today that we're going to cover. And so, we'll go by them point by point, and just go along with that. So let me share my screen. You guys tell me if you can, if you guys can, if you guys can see. Let me make sure. Give me a second. Okay. Let me share this tab. Okay. Can you guys see the tab?
Yes, yes.
Should I zoom in a little more, or is this good? Can you guys read it or
A
more?
little blurry, but I can
What
make.
about now? Is it better?
Yeah, we will. Can you make it? No, it's full screen.
Oh wait, let me see. Let me get this off. Okay, is this better?
Yes, we can. Yeah, I can make it out. We can do it.
Okay, good. So, because my thesis, the reason why I'm talking about this, is this actually highlights part of what my thesis was when I wrote my thesis. And so this is, I wish I had this when I wrote my thesis. Would have made it even. It was a strong thesis, but at least I think it would probably been even a billion times stronger. this particular article. So the topics we're going to cover today, Tan. So I don't know if you have a pen. Um, I'll let you know what the topics are. Um,
Yes,
the
let me grab it
topics,
right now.
okay, are so the first topic we're going to talk about is the Western state as an occult organization.
Okay, I got it. So you say the state as an occult organization?
Yes, the Western state.
Okay, interesting.
Then we're going to copy. Jose gave us a great term. He calls them African colonial districts or the African states or African cities, blah, 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 the modern ones, versus ancient African cities as sites of occultism.
Okay. Okay, so the modern versus the African states of occultism. Okay, got it. Okay, yes. Oh, did I mute myself or are you still on? I'm not hearing anything.
Can you hear me?
No. Okay, now I can.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I lost connection. I'm back.
That's fine. That's
I
fine.
forgot I was on. I forgot I was on Wi-Fi, so I walked too far.
No, that's fine. Matter of fact, Ted, I'm gonna send it to you on WhatsApp so you can have it, so you don't have to write. So
Okay,
check your
yes,
WhatsApp.
that would be awesome. That would be great.
Okay. Also, we have Brother Untouchable. He's here hanging out with us. So shout out to him. And so for those who are in the chat, the last part we'll touch on is today maritime law and modernity, how water navigates global trade for the West versus how internal land trade built African empires. So with that said, let me read this abstract. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but we'll touch on it. And then I want to hear what you guys think. So it says the other Moors, international law, and the origin of the colonial matrix. Right. So it says historiographies of international law have set as a breaking point with the medieval Respublica Christiana and the crucial moment of the discovery of the Americas. In these historiographies, the defining other of Europe is conceived by the thinkers of the Spanish Salamanca schools as the Indios of the Americas, whose encounter powerfully contributed to the shaping and extension of international law outside of Europe. It is argued, however, that the thought of the school of Salamanca was based on a prior normative apparatus already contained in late medieval thought. This proto-modern worldview was focused the Muslim other as the enemy in the mirror. By its proximity, this other unsettled Christendom's very identity through its difference and rejection of Christianity. Europe's encounter with its Muslim other remains curiously absent from international law's historiography. This suggests that international law is conspicuously not a history of the relation between Europe and its Muslim other, and perhaps even based on a tentative erasure of that relation. This chapter will question this accepted historiography and provide a short genealogy of the thought of the school of Salamanca in relation to medieval Europe's other infidels, Saracens, and Moors. We argue that Christianity's complex engagement with Islam at its border constituted a laboratory for international legal concept, including in their most colonial dimensions. So, I've read all that long stuff. What do you guys say to that? We'll
I
start
am.
with Jose.
I was a bit taken off by the Salamanca, because in Suriname, in the woods of Suriname, you have a people that call themselves, yeah, they call themselves that, and their language is far away similar to one of the two Cape Verdean dialects. That took me off a bit. So I missed some of the details because I was sort of blown away, asking myself, what's that? What kind of relation can that name have, or is it coincidence? I was a bit taken off, but that's in other words, that's what I have to say.
Tam, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, can you just go back to the paragraph and let me see if I understand what is being said. So is he saying that the lack of Islam as in international law says that because Islam is other, that they're not included in international law? Let me read that again. Historiography of international law have set as a breaking point within the medieval Republican Christianity as a crucial moment of the discovery of the American. Okay, so the breaking point in discovery of the American. In these historiographies, the defining other of Europe is considered by the thinkers of Salamanca as the Indians of America, whose encounter contributed to the shaping of international law outside of Europe. However, the school of Salamanca was based on a prior normative already contained in late medieval thought, focused on the Muslim other as the enemy in the mirror by its proximity to the other unsettled Christianity. Okay, so are they saying that the presence of Islam was a threat to Christianity because of its otherness, and that international law has conveniently disregarded the contribution of Islam in regards to international law?
I mean, that's one thing I think one can get from it. What did you get from it?
Yeah, that's what this is what I got from it. That is saying that because of the Islam's foreignness, that the contribution to international law to Christendom has been ignored because Islam was very much regarded as very unchristian, and that it was a threat to Christianity's identity because of its rejection. So even though it contributed to international law and it had been there for quite some time, Christianity chose to reject its contribution and claimed to have discovered much of the proponents of international law. So that's what I got from it. I'm not sure if I read that.
So read the second paragraph. What do you get from that?
Okay. Europe's encounter with its Muslim other remains curiously absent from international law's historiography. Okay, yeah, that I do agree with. This suggests that international law is conspicuously not a history of the relation between Europe and Muslim, and perhaps even based on a tentative erasure of that relation. This chapter will question the accepted historiography and provide a short genealogy of the thought of the school of Salamanca in relation to medieval Europe's other infidels, Saracen and Moors. We argue that Christianity's complex engagements with Islam at its borders constituted a laboratory for international legal concepts, including in their most colonial dimensions. Oh, okay. So I think what is being argued here is that while the Christians claimed to have, put down the tenets of international law, and they have conveniently rejected the contribution of Islam from from the story, from the history of international law, whereas we know that the Muslims did have a very strong contribution. And also they're going to look at the relationship of Europe's other infidels, the Saracens and the Moors, and that the relationship between Christianity and Islam is an experiment for international legal concepts, including in the most colonial dimension. So I think it's a superposition between Christianity claiming, and this reminds me of, also mathematics and history and all that, because when we talk about the Renaissance in the 12th century, the actual story of it was not actually a discovery or a rediscovery. The Arabic scholars had been sort of carrying the torch of Western tradition for quite a long time. They had gone back and retrieved the manuscripts of Aristotle and the Greeks and so on, and they brought that knowledge to Europe. And then a few scholars, it was like a cross discovery. The Muslims went and
Oh,
rediscovered.
so you're talking about the so-called rediscovery of the classics?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I've always said that was BS, but go ahead.
Yes, so it was, it was not a rediscovery, rather it was a continuation of what the Muslims were doing. And I think that Christianity is always very reluctant to give credit to somebody else who does not agree with their tenets. And if they were to accept that it was the Muslims who had carried the knowledge, or the Muslims who had discovered, in this case, international law, that would mean that somebody other than Christendom had discovered the laws of the seas, of maritime law, and so they did not want that to be be a mark on them, because it wouldn't seem that like it came from them. It would have to give credit to the same people who they seem to be fighting ideologically and physically. So that's what I got from that.
No, that's a great point. What I want to add to that, and then I'll let Brother Untouchable go, is that for me, and I'll share with you on the back channel, Tan. Um, they never even discovered the classics, because Greece and Rome aren't their history. They're not Greco nor are they Roman. Because when you look at African Americans who were taken from Africa, they still remember dance, language, so many things. You can't tell me that Rome collapsed and you forgot everything. And then we find out that the Dark Ages was a myth, right? So the Dark Ages is part of the Europeans trying to invent a lineage for themselves that they don't have a connection to. They are really the barbarians that the Romans were describing. So what they've done is they've invented. Yeah, but go ahead, Jose.
I'm back in the story, so I want my turn also. I was taken off, but Tanzan read it again, so I'm in the story now. So after after Mr. Untouchable,
Okay,
I want
definitely.
my turn also.
Yes, sir. Brother Untouchable, you've seen our initial engagement. What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. I kind of agree with Tanzan. I think that but from what I have read in these initial two paragraphs, what I'm seeing is that Europe, while denying the instrumental role they played as far as international law is concerned, they seem to be still using a lot of their concepts. It's like they doing a sleight of hands. It's like, well, I think that either you or Jose used the word invent, and invent is an interesting word because they may say that they are inventing something, all the while pulling concepts from the Muslim world. I find that to be very interesting. So it's like it's very early. I'm probably gonna understand a little bit more of the document as we read on, but so far that's what I could tell was actually happening in these two paragraphs. If that's understood. Hello?
Yes. Yes. Are you done?
Yes, Jose, you can go.
Okay, so indeed, it's nonsense. Western Europeans have the habit to wipe out the history of those they take over. North Americans or United Statians, they know practically nothing about their Dutch history. Why? Because over there the British won. And what did they do? Or they won, or they traded their colonial districts, or whatever. They sold New York, New Amsterdam, and turned it into New York, or whatever. The British came after the Dutch, and they wiped out the Dutch history over there completely. You know. So what I'm hearing is did you know that the Turkish flag was waving in what is called today Algeria, to what is called today Indonesia. Everything in between was had the Turkish flag, and that's kind of laughable when Turkish, but don't say it with a Turk near, because they will kill you. But it's laughable that they call Ataturk the father of the nation, because the nation was from Algeria to Indonesia, right? And now it's the only, okay, it's still 1,000 kilometers, right? But it's only Turkey now. So of course there was maritime slash international law. And what I'm getting out of these two paragraphs is just the way Western Europeans are. They will, they are haters. They are haters. It's pure ego. It's the opposite of consciousness. It's the devil against God. So there's something. And right now I'm sharing a thought that is recently developing, and that eventually the last war will be between consciousness and ego. And these motherfuckers are ego in the flesh, even with each other. I mean, look at them lie in Ukraine. That's what they do. That's what they do. They kill you and lie about you. That's what they do. So yeah, that's it.
I would add also memory and reality. um, because it's not enough to just destroy a city. You have to destroy. I think it's somewhere in the Bible where it says, "You destroy that nobody will even know that they existed. Even the memory of them will be wiped out." And this is a total
Yes.
destruction of a people, not just physically but also mentally, to completely wipe them from the face of history and from human memory. And one thing that they know how to do very much is practice collective and convenient amnesia, where the inconveniences of history are just wiped under the rug, and the great achievements are propounded and then put upon a pedestal. So even when you look at the whole history before what they call civilization, before Rome and all that, the history of the during the caves and all that, you don't find much of that in history. You don't find, there's more Egyptology than there is what cocozology, cavology,
Y-
all
y-
that stuff.
yeah.
you know they when it thinks they know that they're going to find ugly things, they don't look for it. But when they find something that contradicts their version of history, they will do everything to remove it from the memory. And I'm not surprised, because
Yeah.
thought is
If
a
if
go ahead.
UFOs built pyramids, UFO built the pyramids. I just wanted to make that remark. So if they try to whitewash Egypt, and when they can't hold it anymore, it's UFOs. UFOs did it. That's
Yes,
it was just
absolutely.
a remark. Excuse. Sorry.
No, no, no. It's it's good. something cannot be physically destroyed, then it will be destroyed in the memory and in the consciousness of the present generation. So even though they stand there as an inconvenient reminder of a lost civilization that they had nothing to do with, one way of them conquering, feeling that they're conquered Egypt, for example, is by going in, sending their scholars and their mathematicians, or not mathematicians, these are not even that, they're archaeologists and their supposed scholars to go and say, oh, well, we have the information and we will tell you what all of this means. So already they have captured that aspect of it, the physical aspect and the intellectual aspect of it, but also in refusing, for other people to learn that they have caused this amnesia also in Africans, that we don't even remember doing all that stuff. It's like you wake up one day and suddenly there's a big rock in your house. You don't know how it got there. You don't know who brought it in, but you already said, well, that can't have been us. Somebody else must have brought it in. So in effect, we have also created the alien theory because those things are there for us to see, but we deny them as well. So we also are participating in their erasure of history. And it's
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so I let someone
So
go ahead.
so here let's keep going with the article, right?
Mm,
So I'm gonna read a couple more parts and then I'll get you guys thoughts.
mm.
So I just want to point out some parts that were interesting to me. I'll send it to you guys on the back channel. It says here international laws. Let me see if I can highlight this. Is it better if I highlight it? Does it look better when I highlight it? Can you guys read it better?
Yes.
No, it's
Okay.
not better. It's not better.
Okay. Let me
No,
see
it's
if I
not
can
better.
change the color. I'm
The
coming.
blue is making it harder to read for me.
Okay. Let me see if I can change the color. Uh. Okay. All right. Don't worry. So, international law's debt to its encounter with its Muslim other, despite its evident linkages to early modernity, remains curiously absent from the discipline's geez, the histori- man, I can't pronounce this word today. I'm losing it.
Historiography.
Yeah, the historiography. Uh, in Angie's Imperialism, Sovereignty, and the Making of International Law. I got to read that book. I haven't read it. I don't know. Seems like an interesting book to read. Perhaps the most influential book of the last decades on the colonial origins of international law. The central focus is on international law emerging from the encounter with the Indian. At no point are the Reconquista and medieval Europe continued dealings with Muslims in its midst and on its frontier, as if the discovery alone marked a fundamental break in the normative interactions between the people. Now, this is an interesting point because, these same Moors or Saracens were the ones who helped them navigate to the New World, right? Let me find another part that was interesting. This is another great scholar. He's from Peru. I've read a couple of his work along with Mignolo, Annabel Quiano. He's very good. Did you guys ever really like that whole philosophical stuff? Annabelle, he's a gentleman. Annabelle Quiano. I've read his stuff with Mignoyo. He has that Matrix of Coloniality. Very, very good stuff. Let me get to this part here. Okay, so let's look at this. So it says the resulting historiography based on the lived experiences of Saracens. So at that time, we weren't just called blacks, right? We were called Saracens, we were called Moors, and infidels will, in a sense, preface that of Angie. In order to do so, we will first discuss proto modern narratives found in Christian Europe, crusading discourses, up to the later days of the Reconquista and the colonization of the Atlantic islands by the Portuguese. Portuguese are very interesting because they were the first ones to grab Africans off the coast. There wasn't a trade, they just grabbed them. So they say their hypothesis is that Muslims were subordinated and ontologically negated. Great word, right? Ontologically negated by the early rendition of international law will be developed by looking at the proto-modern logics of the Salamanca school scholarship. All right. Let me get to this other part here. There's a part where they talk about what the
You know
Portuguese
Portuguese.
did. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
You know Portuguese and Turks look alike very much. I mean, literally look alike, but also their kitchen. The Turkish kitchen and the Portuguese kitchen are both they are similar. They are similar, but imagine the Ottoman Empire, right? I don't know how long it took, how long it existed, but I guess the Suez Canal was not there, right? The Suez Canal was not there yet. So how did they leave the Mediterranean Sea? Between what's called Morocco and the Iberian Peninsula today, right? So I'm guessing that they had outposts there, right? So what we call nowadays these white Berbers and Portuguese and Spanish. I'm guessing you'll find Turkish genetics over there.
That's interesting.
I
So
think that
here's the yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I think that Western thought has intentionally, along with the church and the Catholic Church and the Pope and things of that nature, but Western thought has intentionally written out groups of people out of history for their own specific reasons. Whether it's self-aggrandizement or really, that whole white supremacist thing that they had in their head. We are the conquerors, we are the bringers of the light. But the Muslims have been travelers throughout the world for many, many years. It's just the fact that many of us don't speak Arabic. So we really don't know, the old writings or what they would have put on paper a long, long time ago. We know about Marco Polo, we know about the Christopher Columbuses and what they discovered along with the Bartholomew de las Casas and their lot, but you don't necessarily know what the Muslims did when they travel around the world, because many of us do not read Arabic. And so I think that the unfortunate thing is, you have a restricted view of the world, in particular Western-minded thought. A lot of us don't speak many other languages outside of English. A whole lot of us. So I think that that's what the problem is, as far as, because when you read through this document, it's Pope this, Pope that, Papal Bull, the Portuguese, all of them are governed really by the Catholic Church and Catholicism. So I think that the view of the world is going to be very restrictive. And I'm sure the Asians have their version of what they discovered when they travel the world as well, and their thoughts. But this is just really primarily Western thought. So it's going to be very restrictive.
Well,
No, that's
we
a
know
great
we know
point.
Westerners
And
for burning books.
no, of course, that's what they do. And here's the interesting part. I think both of you guys would be interested in this particular part when I was reading the paper, um, especially Jose. So let me read this part for you guys. So it says, as the Portuguese and Castilian empires began to expand in the near Atlantic, particularly the Canaries, the Azores, Madeira, and Cape Verde, they sought a legitimate authority to do so in the form of a papal authorization. The first years after the 1402 discovery of Las Canarias by the Castilian explorers saw, now mind you, Castilian, this is what we call the Spanish today, right? What we're calling Spanish language is really Castilian. So the Castilian explorers saw the massacre of the population of the islands, the Guanche, and the native islanders of the Canaries were relentlessly slaughtered by the Castilian conquerors because of their opposition to the Spanish occupation and zealous missionary work. So let me read this part. before I get you guys' opinion very quickly.
That's very important what you just said. Because since the inhabitants, the natural inhabitants, didn't take to the religious spirituality or whatever rules of the Catholic Church, they genocided them. And I know y'all guys are heavy with the spirituality, but the not only the Christians, the Muslims have done it too. If you don't particularly accept their spirituality or school or religious thought, you are a dead man, basically. And this what the Christians have done throughout the ages, and the Muslims, by the way.
Yes, that's their game. So now I'm going to
Yo,
show you guys something. Why
Portuguese,
did
yeah, Portuguese are known for to be Catholic, right? And they hired Islamic mercenaries to hunt African spiritual bush doctors here where I am.
No, I'm not. Yeah, that's that's what do they say is par for the course. That's the game that these people play because and we're going to touch on that as we get further to show you how the Western system is a form of occultism, but it's seen as rational. And I told this to Ten yesterday that for me, logic and rationalism is their occultism, right? But I want to touch on this because there's a great part here that I think when you hear some people claiming an identity, I want to get what you guys think, and we'll just do a few more passages in this, and then we'll go on to the next topic. So let's hear this. It says the papal response to Duarte was informed by the legal opinions provided by Thomas jurist Antonio Minucci da Pratovecchio and Antonio Roselli. Man, everybody's named Antonio. Professors at Bologna, the center of natural law thinking at the time. The jurists defined the king's plea as one to wage war against the Saracens, aka the Muslims, who do not possess or hold lands of that king, but who hold lands as if in barbarism. Note here the usage of the word Saracen to talk of the islanders. Now look at this. This is what they did. Look at what they did around the world. Very interesting. And I hope I'll tell you my point is, and I want you guys to tell me what you think. For the Portuguese, the Canary Islanders were Moros, particularly on account of their dark complexion and the fact that some of their customs were reminiscent of those Berbers of North Africa. In effect, they also reminded the Portuguese of the close enemy to which they were daily exposed, the Muslims of Andalusia, the Moros and the
Yeah,
Arabs that also needed to be rectified to safeguard the borders of Christendom. For Duarte, any
yeah,
dark skinned other he was facing was as good as Muslim, notwithstanding obvious cultural differences. So, when you hear Mr. Untouchable, African Americans shout, "We are Moorish school this," it shows you how short sighted their argument is because these people didn't realize that not every dark skinned person was a Moor. But it also proves the fact that the Moors who controlled Europe at the time were not so called light skinned Arabs, but were dark skinned Africans and Tuaregs, Amazigs, and people from
bro,
Mali and
bro,
Senegal. What are your thoughts on that?
brother, you have ancient Dutch songs that speak about Moors as black as soot. Moriaantje zo zwart als roet. Little more as black as soot. Ging eens wandelen zonder hoed. He went out for a walk without a hat. Maar de zon scheen op zijn bolletje. The sunshine on his head. Daarom nam hij een parasolletje. So he took with him a parasol. That's an ancient Dutch song about Moors being as black as soot. And I'm blown away. I've been to the Canary Islands.
Okay. My thoughts on this is this is historical hereticism, and it's the continuation of the war that the Catholic Church had been waging against the various heretics, from the Gnostics to the Protestants. So hereticism is basically the intolerance of an alternate point of view, and the dogma that only one view of theology is, or spirituality is right, that all other views, just by their mere existence, opposes the formal view. So in the Catholic Church, for example, even looking at the Apostles' Creed, or the Nicene Creed, I believe in God, the Church, the Father, and so on and so on. The difference between the Catholic Creed and the Protestant one, or the Gnostic, or the ones that existed at the time, was very small. I think there was only one that said Jesus begotten of the Father, and they took that one out. But it was 99% the same. But the very fact of there being a different version of what you claim to have as the truth is a very unsettling prospect for most of these European people. So it has to be, thought does not, two thoughts cannot coexist, and there cannot be a difference of opinion. So one has to be destroyed. And they did kill a lot of people, not just during Torquemada's era, but way before. They had been doing this from the beginning. Even the Nicene Creed, it was, I think it was Arias and somebody else, and they poisoned him, and he died a very, very pathetic death, because they could not stand for him to have a different view than the church. So historically it's the same, and with international law, which we're talking about now, is the same, that you cannot have a running parallel version to your the theory of events. For them, they have always been here, they have always been the best. There has been nobody who gave them anything. They got everything by themselves. They discovered everything and invented everything. So you cannot come and tell them that, oh no, actually there was a law before that, or there are other beliefs within even your own religion. So that alone makes it actually it makes a lot of sense for them, because you have to get rid of any view, and history cannot be really just one way. I mean, people say it's facts, but if you ask us, let's say somebody invades a city, or they lay siege on a city and eventually conquer it, the story of the people inside and the people outside will be very different. The people under siege will look at the invaders as, these horrible people and so on, and the people outside will be look at the people inside as obdurate idiots who cannot see the logic of what's good for them. So you can't have both stories coexisting at the same time. And this idea of the Muslims actually preceding the Christians in a lot of knowledge and information and legalities, it's very touchy for them, because they would have to give credit to the Muslims, and that would destroy their narrative that they are the end all and be all, and the discoverer and inventor of everything on earth. So yeah.
And the funny thing is,
That's a
the
great
the
point,
Muslims
Tan.
is us. The Muslims is us.
So I want to hear from Brother Untouchable, because Brother Untouchable has probably come across the people on these platforms who, some of them who say, "Oh, we was Moors." But Brother Untouchable, you can hear it right here that the Portuguese at that time, anyone dark skinned was a Moor, even if they were not culturally the people that they ran into in Spain at the time. So the Moors in Spain were dark, but not every dark person around the world was a Moor. What are your thoughts on that, Brother Untouchable?
No, you're exactly right. As this line says, for Duarte, any dark skinned other he was facing was as good as Muslim, notwithstanding cultural differences. So yeah, obviously, how their particular worldview was. This was, I think, 1490 something, and I think it was just after Europe.
1402. This is 1402, actually.
Okay, 1402. So the Muslims were still in Europe. So the
Yes,
Muslims were
yes.
still in
Because
Europe.
remember, these
So
are the Castilians.
so
They're
so
not Spain yet.
but most of these people, they only could go with what they could relate to, and the people who was around them look like were Moors. The people who was the other, who wasn't Christian, they were Moors. So if they were to see someone who looked like them, they would associate them with the people who they just came from dealing with within Europe. But there is a very good book to validate a lot of the things you guys are saying as far as the Moors being black by this historian named Ivan van Sertima. I think he wrote a book called the Golden Age of the Moors, and he talked about the time of the Moors actually going to from northern Africa into Europe. But his discovery was there wasn't only Moors, because there are different time periods of Moors going into Europe. There's an Andalusia period. He mentioned specific different periods when different groups of Moors went into Europe. So there were people who probably looked like Gaddafi, and there were people who looked just like me and you going into Europe. So I wouldn't say it was specifically only black people going into Europe. There were a mix of different Muslims going into Europe. But there's a good book of that though. Check it out when y'all got the time.
Yes, no, Van Sodermo, that's an excellent book. I would definitely recommend any who's watching this to get that book. But for me, when I read that passage, because I was researching a while back, and again, these people assumed, and that was especially the Portuguese, the entire west coast of Africa. Their assumption was that we were all Moors. That was their assumption.
I tell you what, if you go to France right now, and not say anything, most white French people would assume that you came directly from the continent and your religion was Islam. In the same way, they would have looked at you back then, anyways.
Exactly. And I'm going to throw an occultic reference out there. All of the movies that we watch, whether it's Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all of these things that we watch about Europe, right? For me, all of these things, when the white friar, Gandalf, the white guy that's coming to save the day, and if you notice, all the evil things that are coming from space are black, that is the subconscious of the European fearing that the Moor at that time was coming for them. If you notice, all their films, right, whether it's Game of Thrones,
100%.
it's always
Avatar.
this black avatar. It's always this black, more like, and these black creatures are coming, and they're coming to take this lily white person, and he wants to, and even if you watch 300, the messenger was black, Xerxes was black, right? So they're admitting this, but that's their deep down psychological fear of the black man and the black woman. Now, I mean, we can go even deeper. We can talk like Francis Cresswell saying and say it's genetic annihilation, but I don't want to get too deep. I want to read this part to show you guys something, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. So now that was 1402. Now let's look at 1483, right? The Reconquista is already underway. Aragon, I believe, Philip, Ferdinand, and Isabella are married. Now, this chick, Isabella, did not take a shower. She said she only took a shower twice in her life. So her box must have smelled like hot dog water, sanitation, and death. But that's another conversation. And her husband, the Europeans love to put their mouths on things. So if he put his mouth on her, I feel terribly bad for him. But yeah, so also I was talking to Tan on, we were talking, and I was telling her that the game of chess, as it's played today, was changed after the actions of Queen Isabella. They called it Queen's chess or crazy chess or mad chess, because the original game of chess probably would take about 3 weeks to complete. 3-4 weeks to complete. The game that came from India. The game that we play today, with the queen, the piece, the bishop, all of these things are reflective of the change in power that was occurring in Europe at the time. So I want to read this passage that puts that, in concrete form. So it says, the conquest was completed in 1483 under the orders of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, when a large Castilian fleet sailed to occupy Gran Canaria. Queen Isabella had early as 1460 commissioned a collection of homilies from an Augustinian friar by the name of Martin Alfonso de Cordoba, who specifically traced the authority, keyword, for enslaving the Canarians to an early international legal form of the burden of civilization. The barbarians are those who live without the law, the Latins those who have law. For it is the law of nations that men who live and are ruled by law shall be lords of those who have none. Seems how they look at us to this day, right? That's how they still think about us to this day. Wherefore they may seize and enslave them, because they are by nature the slaves of the wise. This was a much harsher foundation for the conquest than the Innocentian doctrine, pointing out not the heretic character of barbarians, but their irreducible incommensurability from the law. The indigenous Guanches fiercely resisted, but were systematically killed and enslaved to be set to work in the new plantations system, a structure brought from the eastern Mediterranean lands conquered during the Crusades. So these people invented the plantation or the economienda system by Spain's Genoese navigators and merchants, and to be converted to Christianity. They would eventually share that fate with the Muslims and Jews of Iberia, soon to be totally conquered by the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. I'm going to start with Tan. What do you guys think? Kaizo, if you want to join, I'm going to post it in the chat. You can come and join us, Kaizo. I'm going to post it in the chat. But Tan, what do you think?
Firstly, sorry for a bit of a digression, but it will make sense a little bit. I'll go back to how have you heard about the dogmen, the cynocephaly?
No. Explain to me.
Okay, so I just looked up a clip, but there was a book I read, which unfortunately you can't share books. But if you just go search for the title, "Do the Dog-Headed Men Have Souls?" So basically, in the 9th century, there was a famed Carolingian theologian, Ratramanas, who sent a letter to the Pope whether the cynocephaly, the dog-headed men, had souls. And he asked the Pope whether the dog-headed men who were supposed to have, their heads were actually on their bodies and they had souls. And the Pope at the time sent him a letter saying, well, they're still sort of, they're like animals, but they have souls. And also Marco Polo, when he was traveling, he also encountered the mysterious dog-headed men. And he talked about the cynocephaly living off the Andaman Island. It's interesting that you talk about the Canary Islands, but yes, he apparently encountered the cynocephaly living in the Andaman Islands, which we know today, to have the very dark people. And for Marco Polo, he said that they are barbarians and they're cruel, and likened them to dogs, to mastiffs. But to the letter of the Pope, that one had a more interesting description, and it sounds like the writings of that Greek guy, not Ptolemy, I think it was Ptolemy, but his name started with a P, and there was a younger, Pliny the Younger and Pliny the Elder. I remember the mysterious and fantastic creatures that he saw on his travels. So that is something like that. But basically, by the 8th century, they had already encountered the other group of people who were different from the Europeans, and they had different types of cultures and so on. But instead of writing it to them as people, writing to the Pope as if they're people, they always made up these very fantastic creatures. Even in the Odysseus of Homer, all these people, some of them are actually historical lands and places, but they always give this like the bull, the bull man, the unicorn, and so on. So they make human beings to be these mixtures of animals and humans in order to make them into savages. And when the first Ratmanas sent the letter to the Pope at the time, then in the 9th century, his contention was that no, the mysterious dog-headed people had no souls, and therefore it was acceptable to enslave them as a means of saving them in a way. So it's not surprising to me that when they encounter something that is different to them, just like hereticism, you don't say that as just an alternative form of something that is different to you. It has to be something that is monstrous and barbaric in order for you to justify your treatment of it. So I'm not, and Ferdinand and Isabella did send their people out, and they found these supposed savages, which by giving them the name and the label of that, it gives you a justification to really do anything that you like. So you're not the savage for enslaving them; they are savages for being, who they are. But if you have time, just search for the do dog head
Yeah,
women
I
have
put it. I
souls.
don't know. Did you see it? I shared it. It was on the screen for a while, right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we shared it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was the
You
original
know,
attempt.
this funny that you said it. I'm gonna show again. We're going into the occult. You guys, brother Untouchable Jose. There's a whole book. See, when we talk about, it's called the Picatrix, right?
Mhm.
It's a manual that was in the 11th century where they talks about astrology, but it gets really deep because they talk about how human beings and animals can mate with each other, right? So these people have always been, let me see, these people have always been basically engaging in that type of practice where, well, yeah, it's on JSTOR. I'm trying to see if I can find some images. But yeah, they've been practicing, breeding man and goat and dog and all kind of genetic hybrids since like back then, 9th, 10th century. But things like Islam forbid those practices. But a lot of their scientists were doing these things in the back alleys, much like the scientists of today are doing all kind of stuff in their laboratories. This time on a cellular level, right? So, Jose, what are your thoughts so far on what we read with their justification for enslaving people? Jose, you there? Jose,
I'm sorry, I forgot to switch on the mic.
yeah,
I
okay, go
forgot
ahead.
to switch on the mic. Can you hear me? Yeah, it reminded me of grammar school. Those. I remember an image of a black man with enormous feet, using his feet as umbrella when it rained, and those were the stupid stories that they would come back. They would return with those type of stupid stories, and back home, their home, they would indeed conclude that those were not humans, and they could be slaughtered and enslaved. Yeah, that's my take on it, or that's my yeah. And out of all of this, I get confirmation. They say, and we continue. We take their story and run with it. They say the Cape Verde Islands were not inhabited, but you see so much more shit, right? The water control, right? Reservoirs and canals running in the mountains that you don't see in Portugal. So it were not Portuguese that built those canals. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand
But
what you're
anyway,
saying. Go
I
ahead.
wanted to add that because because I got cut off earlier, and I wanted to say it earlier, with the Canary Islands, the Spanish invent a sort of a Neanderthal, to cover up that the islands were inhabited by black people, whole kingdoms and shit, and I wanted to add that. The Cape Verde Islands were most probably also inhabited. So these old Portuguese churches may have not been Portuguese. They may have been there already. You understand? But and anyway, yeah. That's my. That's my personal, you know, you three, you are readers, right? You refer to books. I'm a thinker, I'm a thinker and watcher. So most of the time, my references are what I remember of have seen or have encountered, or I'm Cape Verdean, and I have questions about things that are on the Cape Verde Islands. I've been on vacation to the Canary Islands, and I encountered stuff that made me wonder. So just to say, I'm no reader. I'm not. I've not been into books like you guys.
Brother Untouchable, what
Oh,
are your thoughts on that?
yeah, just quickly, Jose. I'm a student, brother. You know what I mean? I try to get information and from anywhere, from through observation, through the written letter, through speaking to people. I try to get it in all all kinds of ways, man. Because I always felt within myself that coming from a very small country, I had a deficit. So I tried my best to make it up in different kinds of ways. So if I refer to books and things like that, don't mind me. You know what I mean? That's just me trying to get a better understanding of the world. But as far as these guys calling people the other as savages, if I was to be fair or objective, let me use that word. If I was to be objective, all civilizations at one time or another refer to the other people who may not necessarily practice their culture or religion or faith savages, infidels, backwoods, all manner of names. The Muslims did it, the Japanese did it towards the Chinese. I'm sure that when the Muslims first went to Europe, and when they saw that, well, the Queen don't take baths, and the Muslims try to wash 5 times a day, they must have thought that, looking at these people, well, these people are savages. So, but I think that the difference is, what the Christians did is they took it a step further. They say, not only are they savages, but because they're savages, they need to be dominated. The Muslims did the same thing too. I don't remember if the Japanese did the same thing to the Chinese, but on one time, and the Europeans too, they call them savages, but they wasn't able to dominate them and conquer them. But I think that word, savage, infidel, backwards, these words have been used. But I just think there are a few groups of people who take it a step further. And not only do they say that these people are savages and backwards, they take it a step further and say, because of that, they need to be conquered. Yeah, so it is a kind of justification. So I understand where you're coming from when you say that, gas them up.
So Ten, I was sharing the let me get back to the article. I was sharing the article, and yes, brother Touchable, that's this is what we have to contend with. Let me get back to the article. So I shared the Sinophilia, and you guys can Google that stuff, the Picatrix. Um, they've been doing this type of stuff in terms of dog-headed men and human-animal hybrids for a very long time. Um, so this is not, anything new.
But would it be fair to suggest that we've been doing it too with Egypt and different parts of West Africa, including animals, that whole anthropomorphic thing of fusing animals with humans together. I mean, how have we been doing that for a long time?
Let me explain the difference, because I know that this comes up quite a lot, and I have heard of this before, and I'm sure you're speaking of Anubis and those other the difference between the Egyptians and what the Greeks term to them. Let's take Anubis, the Egyptian god of of death, and the let's say the what do you call it? That thing that was in the caves, that unicorn, that half bull, half man, that was in the caves, that used to in the labyrinth. The Mauno, it starts with an
The
M.
Minotaur.
Minotaur, yes. So for the for the Egyptians and the West Africans and most of the Africans, this was more of it was a symbolic image of like a god with these good properties of these characteristics. Let's say, like if you say analogy, like he's a lion-headed person, or a lion-headed man, or he has the heart of a lion, or he has the brains of a genius, or something like that. So it was more of a spiritual realm, and it was not supposed to actually imply that those things, that they had, that they had mated. Whereas the Minotaur was an actual product of the lust between a human and a god. That it was actual product of bestiality. Same thing with Zeus, and when he came down as a swan, or all these various animals, he actually came and procreated with human women in the guise of such an animal. So for us, it was more a symbolic, like humans taking on the characteristics of a certain animal, because a dog was supposed to be a guide and a shepherd through death. Whereas for them, it was a literal, incestuous or bestial act between, God and in the form of a beast and a human woman. So that was the difference. And also, when you look at the other depictions, and this also started with the Greeks, with Homer and all these things that he encountered apparently in his Odysseus, in his book. So it was actually for them, it was the sexual aspect of it was the most important part, and for us, it was the spiritual and symbolic importance of it. So these two were very different in the way that they saw things. The Egyptians didn't look at Anubis as the product of a god, a dog and a man. It was actually the personalization of the qualities of the good qualities of a canine, and that of its characteristics in guiding people across the river of after death. So that is the difference, that when we take it as a symbolic form of things. Same thing with the masks. If you look at the masks of the West Africans, when they have those masks, you're supposed to take on the characteristics or the spiritual aspects of the mask that you're wearing. Whereas in Italy and all these places, the mask was supposed to hide, and behind the mask you are free to engage in all kinds of disgusting things. The mask hid your evil human nature, whereas for us, the mask actually brought out your divine qualities. So yeah, that's my
I
short explanation.
What do you
that,
say to that, Mr. Untouchable? That's an
no,
interesting response.
no, I get that. I get that. But just consider the fact that the Greeks learned what they learned, a lot of the things that they learned out of places like Egypt. There was,
Mhm.
but I think that the context is everything. And I think that, no, let me just finish this. If a person was to see the Sphinx, right? From, if I'm from Egypt, if I'm from Nubia, if I'm from places like along those areas, I understand the concept of symbolism. I understand that I'm not trying to fuse these animals together. What I'm trying to do is just get a better understanding or expression of I have a lion's mindset. Yeah, it's just symbolism. I'm not becoming that. But
Yes.
if you take a person from out of Europe and then you plop them in a place like Alexandria or anywhere in Egypt, when they see these things out of context, his mind is going to work differently because his context is different. So he
Yes.
would he would look at that and so, well, the only way I could fuse these two things together is have sex with an animal. Yeah, the only reason why these things could be comparative or have any kind of fusion is obviously you would have sex with this animal, or the whatever, and then have a child, and the child produces a minotaur. So it's
Yes.
just the context are the two different kinds of men. One coming from out of Europe and one coming with a different kind of context and understanding the symbolism and its understanding within spirituality
So
in
so let me so let me ask
African
you guys a question.
mind versus the European mind. That's what I think.
Yes, and
So
that's a
let me
big,
ask you
very
a
big
question.
difference because gods are
What
made from men.
what if perhaps the Egyptians were also crossbreeding and interbreeding species? Could it be? You understand what I'm saying? Like what if they were? If there were, because the people who engage in that high level of science are often the priest class. So what if they were interbreeding man and alligator, dog and this species, and raising them and using them in their armed forces? Can you imagine if you cross the semen of, let's say, a man and a female alligator, and she's able to carry it to term, and she gives birth to this half man, half crocodile,
I want
and
to
you're
say
able
something.
to raise it?
I
Now,
want
if
to
you
answer to
put that in your army, what do? That half man, half
yes.
crocodile can take over land. What do you guys say to that?
I want to answer to that.
They would have left evidence of that though. And the
No,
Egyptians. I'll let you go, Jose. Sorry for interrupting, brother. One good thing about the Egyptians is what they did. They inscribed them things and what they did in stone. So I mean, you can't necessarily. They would have expressed that in somewhere as far as in the walls itself that they actually was breeding humans and animals. But I'll let Jose go. I apologize, Jose.
yeah, no, no, sorry. Uh, uh, thank you. You know that I have this thought about crossbreeding Neanderthal and humans because we were so far advanced that we were bored, right? So we crossbred, and that's this fear of the white man, this fear of the black man from the that's this fear from us, that excuse me, that the white man has. So he was this this savage in our arenas. We 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 didn't throw them we didn't throw them to the lions. No, we bred something in between humans and Neanderthal that fought with the lions, and it was entertainment for us. That's one of my thoughts that I have. But it is so not crocodiles and humans, because that's too far from each other. But Neanderthal and humans as entertainment, the gladiators, uh, these beasts fighting each other, this priest. This priest believes that his breed interbreeding Neanderthal and humans are stronger. And on the other side is that other priest that has interbred some other Neanderthal from Siberia or something like that, and he believes his interbreds are stronger. Just like nowadays you have football clubs or whatever. That's a thought that's been haunting me for almost all my life. But anyway, that
No, no,
was.
that's a good point. Like I said, I'm not saying um I have an answer or whatnot. Mr. Untouchable has to go. But thank you very much, Mr. Untouchable. Always appreciated.
Yes, brothers
Um,
and Tanzan. I guess I'll talk to y'all guys tomorrow. Okay, I'll talk
yes,
to y'all.
yes,
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yes.
yes. And again, I'm gonna post the link in the chat. If anybody wants to join in, they can join in. Winston, if you want to join in, you can also join in as well.
Oh yeah, what
Um,
I wanted to add. What I
yeah,
wanted to add. So their revenge in Rome was to throw us to the lions. You see, that's. I wanted to finish the thought. That's
perhaps that
you know.
might be the case, right? That might be the case. Who knows, right? Because it's his story. right? And
Yes.
we're under that thing. But
And
I
if
would
there's one thing
argue
they are
that
good at, war.
there is a possibility that from an occultic scientific perspective, that the higher level priesthood have always been into those type of things that the layperson may not have engaged with, right? They may have uh, made different breeds, because think about it, if we can cross pollinate different seeds and different plants to create food that we eat today, I don't put it past the ancient priesthood of interbreeding, who they would consider people who were below them with different, species or different mammals, to see what they could create. I don't put that past them. But I want us to keep going because we have a lot of interesting.
I
But go
need
ahead,
to
Ted.
interject
Go ahead.
right now,
Yes,
just
yes, go ahead.
based on what you two have spoken about. The first one about breeding people just out of boredom. I don't put it past the Egyptians. Firstly, with the whole Neanderthal breeding, there has been no evidence of any Neanderthal intermixing inside the continent. All of it was outside the continent. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, there could have been, interbreeding, and some of plants, let's say mixing maybe wheat and grain and all that. And I know the Egyptians did have a very advanced knowledge of plants and science and genetics and all that stuff. So I'm quite sure that they did enhance their plants and animals for food and not for boredom. So I'll give that to the Egyptians, but there has been no evidence of. In fact, even if you look at the laws of Ma'at, if the rules were so strict that I have not laid down with a man, and there was rules against even human beings having illicit relationships, I really doubt that they would have a relationship between man and woman. You have, like we said, when they saw the interactions between species, it was a symbolic and religious and spiritual aspect. That is how they looked at the mixing of things. It was in a spiritual realm, not in a physical one. Now, I will give you examples of when priests actually did this, kind of crazy mixtures. And this was in the Sumerian chronicles when you look at the Anunnaki. In fact, their story of the Anunnaki, and it's very similar to the NOI. I don't know if you know the guy with Yakub, the big-headed scientist.
Yes.
Yeah, all that. But this was not done in the continent. This was outside of the continent, and I think they borrowed a lot from the story of Enki and Enlil and the people who came to enslave mankind. So for them, those are a group of outside beings who came in, and they wanted to create a race of slaves. And when they came to Earth for them to mine gold, and this was done in Sumeria. And this is why I know that they do have a very strong amnesia, even theologically. What does not fit in their narrative, they want to forget, because instead of studying Sumerian history, which is closer to their history, they go overboard with Egyptology, because Egyptian history is actually the nice sort of history. You don't find such degenerate behavior if you look at it. The priests in Egypt who are not engaging in this kind of physical degeneration. They were involved in higher level mathematical concepts, but they were not doing these kinds of things. Now the Sumerian priests, they were actually doing genetic studies, and they were splicing DNA in their books. They were splicing DNA of various animals and human. In fact, the whole concept of lizard people and all these things, those are found in Sumerian Anunnaki literature, where you actually find pictures of human beings, with lizard heads and reptilian bodies and things like that. So in Sumeria, they did do a lot of genetic testing and inbreeding and things like that. Same thing with Neanderthals. Scientifically, Neanderthals have been found to have admixed with human beings around between 30,000 and 45,000 years ago in the caves of Spain, Portugal, and in other caves of Europe, but mostly in Spain and Portugal. So this did happen in Europe. And the difference is, we have to make a clear difference between what was happening in Egypt and what it meant, and what they were trying to do, versus what was happening in Sumeria. And Sumeria was they did have a lot of these things, and they were breeding people. And you talk about gladiators. Gladiators was also a very Roman thing. The Egyptians had wrestlers, and where two men would face against each other and they would fight. They had the physical wrestling and so on, but it wasn't a fight to the death, and it wasn't fighting with animals, that sort of thing. Although they did have hunting matches and things like that. So unless you have some evidence of Egyptian priests engaging in that, I have not seen.
Well, here's the thing. This is an occult based thing, so we leave everything open, right? That's how I like to leave things. I like to leave things open. I don't think there's a definitive. Me personally, like even with the and I was thinking he might be in the platform. He might be able to call in with Kaizo. I don't think the Metro was ever deciphered. So I think a lot of the stuff we think we know about Egypt is nonsense. But that's another conversation. So we'll probably we can touch on that maybe next week. Right? Was the Medu Neter deciphered? We can really touch on that next
eventually.
week. But because I want us to continue, Jose. I want us to continue because we're gonna. I don't want Egypt is great, but I don't want us to get bogged down in Egypt. So on the screen you'll see, right, and this is the last part of the article I'll touch on. And I want you guys to tell me, because my link, I'll tell you what I link it to. So it says here, in fact, one of the defining factors of the post-Reconquista era was certainly the end of the myth of La Convivencia that saw Iberia as the crossroads of culture of the Mediterranean world. The Spanish Catholic monarchs centrally instituted their myth of religious uniformity. I'm going to remember this word, guys, religious uniformity, because I'm going to link it to something, and I want to hear what you guys think. Religious uniformity in Catholicism allowed for the stabilization. So hear this. It allows for the stabilization of the internal politics of the realms of European rulers. Because it provided a common collective purpose and a common identity shared by all subjects. I'm going to repeat that again. And when I link it, I hope you guys understand. The Spanish Catholic monarchs centrally instituted their myth of religious uniformity. Religious uniformity in Catholicism allowed for the stabilization of the internal politics of the realms of European rulers because it provided a common collective purpose and a common identity shared by all subjects. Now, the last part, you know what? I'll read it. I'll get to it. So it says, a notable example of the ambition of a homogenized Spanish society already in the works before 1492 was the doctrine of limpieza de sangre, cleansing or purity of blood. This doctrine's precursor, the expurgo sanguine doctrine, was a requirement for holding public office. Now, I've said before, and I've told this to Tan, that the Machiavellian state, as it's changed into the modern day nation state, was using religious doctrine to justify their expansion. They needed permission, and that was the justification. So you can see the Pope has issued, papal bulls about propaganda. So it's okay to grab people from their land and enslave them because they're slaves. These people don't have law. So they're finding justification through the sacral, right? Through sacral means. And as the secular state is being created in the 1700s, you have this separation of church and state. They now have to use, because they want to separate church and state, they want to use philosophical justification, So this is where their philosophers come in. And I argue that the quintessential philosopher for them to justify this is Immanuel Kant, because Immanuel Kant creates this universalization principle that allows the secular state justification for their excess, right? The personal becomes political. Now, I'm going to read that last statement here and then replace it with something. I want to hear your thoughts. So, the Spanish Catholic monarchs, okay, so religious uniformity in Catholicism allowed for the stabilization of the internal politics of the realms of European rulers because it provided a common collective purpose and a common identity shared by all subjects. Now, I'm going to say this. I want to hear your thoughts. Pan-Africanism allows for the stabilization of the internal politics of the realms of African rulers because it provides a common collective purpose and a common identity shared by all subjects. What do you guys think there?
Nah, no. You know, I've got a. I hate to say it, but okay, I'm going to use these words, right? I hate it, but I'm going to describe it as follows. I have a Portuguese background, right? So the word convivência is what Pan-Africanism is, and not what you describe, right? So convivência is nowadays is something like to live with each other, right? Ambience. Okay, I'm in Senegal. Convivência is you have in the same street that isn't even 60 meters long. You have 5 or 6 ethnicities, right? That's convivência. You know, so you're living together, you're living next to each other, you're living with each other, and that's what Pan-Africanism is. Pan-Africanism is an umbrella for Africans united all over the world. That's what Pan-African means. So it's not what was being described in here.
Tan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's what is being here. And the other thing that it says here is that the large presence of the others was a formidable obstacle to the realization of the unity and identity of Christendom. So both minorities were a reminder of the destabilizing influence of the other on Christendom, especially in the kingdom itself. So for them, the idea of unity was based on the fear of the other. The idea of Pan-Africanism, actually the opposite, is the love of each other. So I think these are very different things. For them to unite, they need a common enemy. They do not unite because of their common interest. They unite because of their common enemy, which is, in the form of the others, the Jews and the Muslims.
Well, I'm going to push back on both of you a little bit. I'll push back.
Sure.
To say blackness and being Pan-African or being Pan-African are negative unifications. So we are only black, again, in the concept of this, the concept of the other, right? We are only black because we don't have the presence of whiteness, right? So blackness is a definition that's given to us, much like in Harry Potter. He walks around with his wand and he says Bedidio, and whatever he points to becomes Bedidio, right? So the European encounters us. So initially we were Saracens, we were infidels, we were Moors, and then we become black, right? So that term sticks, negro, negra, nigar, right? Nigger, right? So this sticks, these descriptions of us, and we accept them. So much in the same way, we are Pan-African. If there is no there's no unified European conquest, then there is no, relation to so-called be Pan-African, because there's no unified aggression. The minute that unified aggression no longer exists, then there's no need, for the most part, to engage within that framework. So that's why I said if one were to replace the words here in this definition where it says religious uniformity in Catholicism allow for the stabilization of the internal politics, right? Because that's what Pan Africans want. So if I replace religious uniformity and I just put Pan Africanism in every part,
Yes.
so I say Pan African, right? In uniformity in Pan Africanism allows for the stabilization of internal politics. That's what everybody who's a Pan Africanist wants.
No, that's not true.
No,
And
you
of
are
the
actually
common Pan
projecting.
African rulers,
You're
because it,
taking the difference to
okay,
the difference that I said, and you put the same thing that you guys were saying about the difference with the symbolism and the actual practice of the Egyptians. So you guys are using the difference as a commonality, and that's completely wrong actually, because here I'm saying that their difference is that difference of somebody the other. Pan-Africanism is not about somebody is attacking us, therefore it's needed because somebody is attacking us, but that identity remains whether they're attacked or not. The Egyptians did have their vision of who they are, and they looked at the Nubians as, though they were a different group from them, they were still their brothers. Even though they went to war, they were still part of a shared identity. So it's a shared identity, not a reaction to a different one. So you can see here that even here they don't talk about the unity of the Christendom, and Christianity has never been unified. They talk about the other, which is the Jews and the Muslims. So I think theirs is the other and ours is the identity of who we are.
Yes,
Maybe Jose can explain it better, but I don't think that that's what's going on here.
I actually agree with you, except for one thing. Why it doesn't seem to work? So yeah, why it? So I agree with you, except for one thing. Why it doesn't seem to work is that we are normal. So they have to distinguish themselves from the rest of the world, right? And the rest of the world was black. Everywhere were black people, right? And they had to disturb that. As is written in this piece, they had to disturb everything internally, and we don't have this habit. Why? Because we are just like reality. Reality doesn't have to defend itself. It's the lie that has to draw the line, like don't go there, because then we come too close to the truth, right?
Then just I agree with you more than you think. What I'm also saying is that even without Pan-Africanism, we wouldn't need it if we were not under attack. We don't need to declare it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what goes wrong is that we are still not conscious enough that we are under attack. The most of us, what I see here, for example, is that the most of us don't see this threat because it walks on 2 feet. It has two arms and a head. It looks like us,
Actually
but
embrace
it
them instead of
has
looking at them as the other, whereas they are opposed to it.
Exactly.
Instead
So
of,
we are still we are still the truth. We are still reality that doesn't need to defend itself, but we are in danger. We need to defend ourselves. So Pan-Africanism is not like how this piece was written. It's an umbrella, and there's no tweaking in internal affairs, right? But what we see, what I fear that Gasdemup is speaking against is these people that are calling themselves Pan-African at the moment, right? But they are not Pan-African. They are Anglo-Saxon,
you
ex-Africans,
mean
or something.
Afro-Saxon, Afro-Saxons.
They are
Good one.
Afro-Saxon, or yeah, indeed, Anglo Afro, somewhat like something like that. They cannot escape the excuse me. They cannot escape the mental the worldview that the West has given them. So it's when they speak of power, it's about physical power, war. It's about war and those type of things, right? And it's about having things and not being things, right? So they are locked in the Western worldview, like Google, how Google should say, described it, their Weltansichtkrieg. They have lost the Weltansichtkrieg, right? They have lost, or they are lost in the worldview war. So so they are not anymore in the truth that people are here in Senegal are, and that is that the truth or reality does not need to defend itself. And at the same time, that's the error that people make. But I hope you understand what I mean, right? A lot of us, because it's, we've been living in a white man's country too long. It's in Europe, it's the same thing. They have everything to say about the African leadership, that they go to Europe when they are sick, etc., etc. But motherfucker, you live in Europe, you shit in Europe. You shop in Europe. Those African leaders only go to hospitals when they have a special sickness, right? And you're condemning them for not fixing their country, so they could send their children to a hospital in their own country. But motherfucker, you are 100% in another country, and you call yourself a Pan African, right? The same thing, in the diaspora, Europe or America. We have everything to say about tribalism, but hey, shut up, right? But anyway, next.
Well, I've been shouted down by the Pan Africanist. um, I always like to use those type of examples, but I definitely understand what you guys are saying. So we touched on that article, and I think the article for me is a good segue to what I want us to go in. I think we're on good time. We shouldn't be um, that long, but I want us to touch on the first topic, which I'm going to talk about, to say that the Western state, as you can see, um,
Wait a
the
minute. Wait a
West.
minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did we have the maritime law?
No, we're not. We're starting. We haven't even touched anything. We're starting the very first topic.
Oh,
So,
serious?
yeah. So, the Western state is a form of occultism. Remember what the article said. What does Catholic Universalism try to do? Same as Kantian Universalism tries to take different groups, sanitize them through this myth of purity, right? This sangre, impezia, whatever that stuff was of sangre, this purity
Limpeza,
doctrine,
limpeza.
limpeza, right? And it forces you to now be this uniformed soldier. So now, when one looks at, for example, I've always talked about the book. I'm going to share the screen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Jose, you should be familiar with this. It was called From Peasants to Frenchmen, right? I'm going to share it now.
I
Let
don't, I
me.
don't, I don't know why I should be familiar with it, because I live in Europe.
Yes.
Okay, well, you know the Franks, the Franks, the French and the Franks. You know
Yes.
something about that? So,
No,
because
no.
you mentioned universal soldier. The Franks were always, they were like mercenaries to everyone. If you had money, you hired the Franks, and you would beat anything. And till this day, France have this legionnaires, right? The French.
Kind of like the Swiss Army for the Pope.
Yes, that was back in the days, but nowadays you have no, you still have France, still have these this this army that has no state.
So let me zoom
The
in so
French,
you guys can see this.
the French legionnaires,
Mm.
and anyone, if you're a criminal, you can sign up. You'll do the most dangerous work. You go even earlier in than the Texas regiment, right? The Texas regiment is always the first, right? But
Mm.
the French legionnaires, they already live there before the Texas Rangers come in, right? they
Well,
they
I mean,
are
you know,
they are
any
literally
The Americans are always you know, they're the dumb Anglo cousins, but
yeah, but
but look at this. So go ahead,
so,
Jose. I didn't mean to cut
so
you off. Go ahead.
sorry. Oh,
No, no,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Yeah. No, this French legionnaires, you sign in, and you're somebody else. You disappeared. You have stopped existing because you're going to be hired by, maybe even a mafia, a Russian mafia, or an African dictator, or Americans, or CIA or NSA is
I
going
was just
to.
about to say that, much like how the when you work for the CIA, you disappear. But
Right.
so let me show you guys this because this is my contention that the modern state is a form of occultism. It's universalizing things, right? Now, this is a great book that I loved reading. It's called Peasants into Frenchmen: The Modernization of Rural France. And there's a quote. I mean, I because I haven't read the book in a while, but one of the quotes in the book, it says that the European was searching all throughout Africa and Asia for barbarians and savages, but realistically, the true savages were actually in their backyard, the rural Europeans, right? Like the gypsies, the remnants of all those people who had escaped the creation of the Machiavellian state and the Enclosure Acts. So let me just quickly read this to you guys. So it says, France achieved national unity much later than is commonly supposed. For 100 years and more after the revolution, millions of peasants lived on as if in a timeless world, their existence little different from that of the generations before them. The author of this lively, often witty, and always provocative work traces how France underwent a veritable crisis of civilization in the early years of the French Republic as traditional attitudes and practices crumbled under the forces of modernizations. Local roads and railways were the decisive factor. So one of the things they did to destroy the ancient cultures is they brought in railroads and highways for commerce. Much like they did that here in New York with the Cross Bronx, right? That's actually brought a lot of asthma to the people. Um, so bringing hitherto remote and inaccessible regions into easy contact with markets and major centers of the modern world, the products of industries, the products of industry rendered many peasant skills useless, and the expanding school system, which is why I'm not a fan of so-called we have to be educated, we have to be educated, taught not only the language of the dominant culture, but its values as well. Among them, patriotism. So, you Pan Africanists, please be careful. I don't want to be a patriotic Nigerian. By 1914, France had finally become la patrie, in fact, as it had been so long been in name. So,
Again, 1940.
1914. So we assume that there
But
was a unified France in the 1800s. No,
oh
France
shit!
didn't become a fully
Just
unified France
just like
until
Germany,
1914.
just like Germany,
Just like Germany, just like Italy with
the
what
Netherlands.
the Netherlands, just like what's this guy's name in Italy, Garibaldi, right? So when I say that the modern Western state is occultism, I'm saying that it is a system that changes these peasant people and universalizes them. It gets them to speak the language of the metropolis. It gets them to believe in, the values of the dominant culture and to be patriotic, to die for your fatherland, to become a soldier is heroic. You understand? So that's a form of occultism. That's a form of brainwashing and mind programming. What do you guys think about that?
Well, France is not entirely. Just like I said, they were the army that you could hire. You know how a Freemason in French is franc-maçon. In Dutch, you have an expression that describes someone that don't give a fuck, and that's frank and vrij, right? Frank and free. And frankly, I don't give a fuck, right? So in English or American, you also have this expression. Frankly, I don't give a fuck, right? So frank is something resembling to free, not bound to a nation, not nationalistic. But anyways, I'm speaking, of course, about before 1914. Damn. Hey, thanks, man. I'm learning. I'm learning. I'm realizing you get these conversations give me stuff to realize things like aha. But anyway, next.
Well, that's why we have you on the platform. Ten. What are your thoughts, Ted? I know you're chomping at the bits. What do you say?
Oh yeah, I'm just disagreeing with everything you're saying today. I think that you're putting the sense of pan-Europeanism, or whatever they call themselves, on Pan-Africanism. The first one, the first thing that you say is the stripping of identity. Firstly, the difference between like a legionnaire, or the American system, or the European, is that here, when you pass here, you lose your identity. You become the person that you are. But that's not what Pan-Africanism. Actually, Pan-Africanism is a celebration of all the different cultures. When you become, there's no one pan. This is not a one Africa. I think maybe that's the confusion. It's not one prescription mode for everybody, that once you're here you lose who you are. In fact, Pan-Africanism is a celebration of who you are. And it's not patriotism either, because patriotism is only concerned for a country, and we know that most of these countries were not here at the time. In fact, if anything, it's a cultural celebration of the diverse cultures. I would say, out of many, where it's simply a shared cultural bonds between people of African descent. That's all it is. It's not the loss of your identity. It's not the worship of blackness or anything like that. It's just the shared commonality, the brotherhood of a people. That's all it is. And the difference between Pan-Africanism is simply unity versus patriotism, which is loyalty. A patriot is not looking for unity with others. He is loyal to his country, and he will die for his country. And that's it. That's a big difference between somebody who celebrates, the different people who fall under the umbrella of Pan-Africanism.
So, what are your thoughts? Even though I was throwing shots at the Pan Africanism, what are your thoughts on this premise on France and what France underwent in order to become a unified France? What are your thoughts on that?
For them to be unified, it requires two things. One, it requires the enemy, which we're talking about. The other, there has to be an opposition to them in order for them to even come together. I wouldn't say unite, because obviously they didn't unite. And you mentioned Germany as well. They had Bavaria and all this stuff. And Germany was actually one of the last to become a union. Same with Italy. Even after their unification, they were still fighting amongst themselves. So there is no unity for them, but there is patriotism, even even amongst the disunity. And the second thing that it requires is the severe brainwashing. So that means that when you become, let's say, a Frenchman or a German or all this, you forget your previous cultural history, which is the exact opposite from Pan-Africanism. You forget, even when you come to America, you're supposed to just forget, your culture and become, American or become Western and so on. So those are the two things: the opposition and the stripping of the previous cultures. And yes, it is a cult and a brainwashing one at that.
So now here's my question to both of you. If that is the case, if what you guys are pushing back at me, then I would assume you guys are against the nation state or African nation states, because
Are,
African nation states are the
are no,
precursor to
those are no
create.
states.
Wait, hold on. The African nation states are the ways in which what I just talked about with French unification that took them until 1914. We talked about Germany, we talked about Italy. It was through the nation state model.
Nope, not necessarily.
If hold on, wait, let me finish. If Pan Africanism is as you guys are describing it, then I would push to say it would have to exist outside of the nation state model. Because if what you're telling me is that it's a celebration, it's not this brainwashing, it's not this mass education, it's not this building of trains through African villages so everyone can have a Walmart and become fat. If that's what you're telling me, then Pan Africanism has to be or should be encountered through a non-state binary, right, or a non-state modality.
I agree. I agree.
I
I
don't,
agree.
but continue.
No, I'm done. I want to hear what Tan says.
Okay, let's just go back to definition. So we know we're talking about the same thing. And this is from NBCIT. What is Pan-Africanism? It's the notion that all African people on the continent and throughout the diaspora share cultural bonds and a collective goal for liberation and advancement around the world, with Africa as the homeland for Africans and the diaspora. So that's all it is. There's no nation state involved. There's no requirement for doing this one way or another. It does not require socialism or communism or one or the other. It is simply shared identities. It can incorporate nation states, but that's not what it was founded on. The nation states were not built on Pan-Africanism, quite the opposite, actually. So you can't call that, the nation states. The patriotism of, say, the pro-Nigerians or the pro-Togo, whoever they are, that is just a component of post-colonialism. Now, can Pan-Africanism work with nationhood? Yes, it can work within that context, because that, unfortunately, is the reality of the world today, but it neither requires it nor demands it. So it has nothing to do with nationhood. It can incorporate it, but it doesn't require it.
So my last pushback to you is: can you show me the origins of Pan-African thought outside of the nation-state model?
Yeah, absolutely. It started with the realization. In fact, it started in Trinidad and Tobago with the realization that African people all around the world had common interests and shared cultural bonds.
But
And
Trinidad and Tobago is a nation-state.
okay, well, it was a nation state at this, but it
That's
wasn't
what I'm
built
trying
on
to
the nation
say.
state. It was no. Gasdemup, no. Don't throw a skeleton holes. It wasn't built on that. It was built on a people, not on the state. Yes, there was a state, but that
No,
was
no,
not
no.
the
I'm not saying
requirement.
that. No. I'm not saying that Trinidad and Tobago was built by Pan Africanism. I'm saying that if you can show me how Pan African ideology would arise outside of the confines of the nation
Well,
state
okay, let me
encounter.
give you a
So
brilliant let me
wait,
give you a brilliant
because I
example.
want to
I'll
clear
give
my
it to you right
question.
now. I'll give it to you right now.
Okay.
in the Americas, when they were talking about, like the Liberian movement going back to Africa, and even before that, there was a great number of people in the Americas and even in South America who did want to go back to Africa and wanted to trace their roots back to the original. That time there was no, nation states in Africa. This was around maybe in the 1800s, 1700s, when the first people, called themselves, Africans. So it was not based on nation states, nor did it require it.
But
I
wait,
want I
It
want
here's
to
the
was
I
thing.
based
want to
on the
look in I want
I
to
know,
cultural
look
Jose.
back.
identity.
Give me 1 second, because I want to point this out to 10. Again,
Uzbek.
these people, Fela Kuti, his
Not Fela
grandparents
Kuti, I'm talking about
are
the pre-nation state Pan-Africanism. That's what you
yes,
asked.
no, I know. Hold on, 10. His grandparents were former enslaved people who left Brazil, got to Sierra Leone, and came back. But keep in mind, they left Brazil. So what I'm saying is that Pan African ideology, right, did not exist until it encountered the form of the nation state. And it
No,
existed and it was created by those who were on not on the continent, who were not continental. So,
let me
like you
push
said,
back. Let me push back.
Trinidad and
Let me push back.
hold on, Jose, It was created in Trinidad and Tobago. So this is an African who comes from a a non-state, right, ethnicity, who's been kidnapped and grabbed by these Portuguese, Castilians, and these African middlemen. So they grab this person who doesn't come from a state ideology or state background. He's brought to the Americas. He now is in the Americas. The American nation states already exist. Brazil, the United States, Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti. These nation states exist now. So now the African has to contend within the nation state, and this is where Pan African ideology arises within that nation state that they are housed within. And they now take it back home.
Wait
That's
a
why I was
Jose
minute.
has
asking you.
spoken
Wait
Yeah, go ahead.
a
extensively of the
minute.
a reality of enslavement. The nation state was simply a tool that was foisted upon them. They did not really require, they did not base any
No,
of the ideals on, oh, we are from this nation, therefore we are Pan-Africanism. No, they
that doesn't matter.
built their
That doesn't matter.
principle
May
on the
I?
fact
May
that
I?
we share a cultural identity despite these
Yes.
national boundaries, and that's why they
Yes.
sought to go beyond the boundaries. They did not require nations, or they only wanted a people who shared a common ideal and a common cultural heritage.
Yes, may I please at
Please.
Trinidad and Tobago, right? Like many countries in the Caribbean have other ethnicities inside. They have Asians. 1 minute. 1 minute, 1 minute. Okay. They have Asians, South Asians, East Asians, and our people. So
Mm-hmm.
people in Trinidad and Tobago, okay, they are confined inside of this nation state, right? But they are looking at each other like, hey, you're from African descent, I am from African descent.
Mm-hmm.
In the neighboring countries, they are from African descent, and that is Pan African. In the neighboring countries, there are
It
also
transcends.
Asians and East Asians, but the Pan African factor is the people, not the nation,
It transcends the
and
nations and
and not,
unites the people.
yes, not even the people in the nation. No, it's the
Mm-hmm.
people that looking to each other and say, hey, Ubuntu, I am because you are. That's
Mm-hmm.
Pan-Africanism. That's
Yes.
Pan-African. So it's not a nation state, it's us. Pan-African is us. So this one is in Trinidad, that one is in Suriname, that one is in French Guiana, that one is in Jamaica, that one is in Cape Verde Islands, that one is in Chicago. Pan-African. You can
Whereas
you
nationalism restricts, you say within these borders, this is who you are, and you cannot be other than this. And no matter what your race, creed, color, whatever, once you're within these borders, that's all you are, which is the entire opposite of what Pan Africanism is.
exactly. Those are slaves. Those are slaves because they cannot think outside of the colonial territory.
Do you understand
Well,
now, Gasdemup?
no, listen, look, I push back, and obviously, you understand, I'm only pushing back so you guys can see That's why I asked the question: can Pan-Africanism exist outside of the nation state?
Yes.
Unfortunately, um, you know, I don't know if that's a reality
He had
because
just
the
described to
people.
you the reality. How do you not see it?
No. Or I didn't dispute his what he described. I'm just saying, unfortunately, when you look at the people, Martin Delaney, Garvey, down to Nkrumah, and what they espoused in theory was great, but I still contend and push back to them to say that what they created was as a result of them engaging within this nation state, this French, what, and that's why I was
This is
describing the
what they were
France and all
contending
these things.
against, not for. This was the reality. It's like saying, oh, in order to want to be free, it's because you're a slave. Yeah, because you're a slave, you want to be free, but you're not fighting for freedom because you're a slave. You're fighting for freedom because you're a human being, and that is your right. If you happen to be enslaved, that's part of why you have to fight. So one of the reasons why they have to fight is because they were confined within the nation states, and they were trying to break from those bonds. So they did not require, in fact, they wanted to resist those very same bonds that were holding them back.
No, those are great points. Those are great points. I think we've touched on it very well. I think I've put my ideas out. Remember, I like to keep it theoretical and ideological. So I've pushed my ideas out there, and the audience can deal with it however
Jose,
they
I
like.
think I think we want this one. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you and Jose are tag teaming. You and Jose are beating me up here.
Now we're just
So,
logical, we're just, good thinkers, and then we know stuff.
well, I'm not logical. I don't believe in logic in the Western sense. I'm against logic. I'm against rationalism. So, the next topic is the Western state, sorry, African colonial districts, right? So, versus African ancient cities as sites of occultism. So, before I get to that, as you can see, I talked about how the Western state is organized. So now I want to touch on, I don't know if you guys can look at the screen. Um, Let me zoom in. It's a great book I read a while ago called Necropolis. And when I was researching, I said, "What? Wow, this is fascinating." So I'm going to show you guys a pattern that I'm seeing here. You guys tell me. Um, Necropolis says London and it's dead. Let me zoom in. Can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me read it. From Roman burial rites to the horrors of the plague, from the founding of the great Victorian cemeteries to development of cremation, and the current approach of metropolitan society towards death and bereavement, including more recent trends to displays of collective grief and the cult of mourning, such as that surrounding the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. Excuse me. Necropolis, London and its Dead, offers a vivid historical narrative of this great city's attitude to going the way of all flesh. As layer upon layer of London soil reveals burials from prehistoric and medieval times, the city is revealed as one giant grave with the remains of previous eras, pagan, Roman, medieval, Victorian, right? So a lot of people don't know that London is actually built on top of a cemetery. Like you can that if you go underground, you'll see skulls and bones. Um, I'm going to let me see Paris. Let me zoom out so you guys can see that. It's a little too much. Yes, the catacombs of Paris. So again, you see that Paris. I mean, look at this, right? This is Paris. You know, all the Africans run to Paris and they're so eat le flan bleu. They're eating dog ass with honey drizzled on top, and they think they're fancy. And this is Paris, right? So again, this looks like some deep occult voodoo stuff right here. These skulls, and this is what. So this is underground. The people are walking on top of this, by the way. This is Paris. So again, I'm mentioning this to you, Jose. I've never been to Paris. I'm assuming maybe you've passed there, Jose. I don't know, but you know, again, people might walk by there and not realize that they're walking on top of, you know, um, the dead, right? Whereas you compare that to Africa, we had the idea of keeping the forest. There was a forest where the dead stayed. Then you had an evil forest, right? Where if you did anything despicable to the community, you were put over there. You weren't given a proper burial. Now let me show you um, this right here. Let me see. Okay, right here. So this is New York City, and this is actually downtown 290 Broadway. It says, and it's probably more because they don't want to admit it, the site contains the remains of more than 419 Africans buried during the late 17th and 18th centuries in a portion of what was the largest colonial era cemetery for people of African descent, some free, most enslaved. Historians estimate there may have been as many as 10 to 20,000 burials in what was called Negro burials ground in the 18th century. So this is where the site is located. People who've never been to New York City, this is where Wall Street is. And Wall Street, it was a wall where slaves were sold. It was a wall, at least from the research that might, you know, who knows if it's true, but from what I've read, it was a big wall that separated where they were trading them so you wouldn't see the stench and the filth. And so, just again, showing you the occult ideology of these Europeans, because within their states, see how they're using occultism to create their nationhood and patriotism, right? Brainwashing the people. And then their metropolises, their major cities, are built on top of dead bodies. That's some very occultic stuff. I mean, like, again, these are people who are burning their women as witches. Very, very deep occultic stuff. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then we're going to juxtapose it with the African colonial city. And I'm going to use Lagos because I know Nigeria. And then we'll compare that to an African village. So first, let me get your thoughts on this, what I just showed you guys, these three main cities. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not surprised. I already saw like a whole documentary about the catacombs in Paris. There was one in Britain, London. They have several of those monuments. They do worship death, whereas we simply, encounter it. So no, that's normal for them, of course. Jose?
Well, Jose, are you there?
I've been to Paris, like Gasdemup said. Yes, I've been to Paris. I've not been to London. And what was the other city? Oh, New York.
Yes.
I'm never setting foot in that shit that they call a country. I'm never setting foot there. Maybe I may even get in trouble for things that I've done or said. You know. I mean, I got Palestine. I got too much Palestinian friends, so maybe like Palestinian friends that wanted to go on vacation over there, they return me right at the border. I don't know. Stupid,
I mean,
stupid. It's a stupid mess.
Jose,
I will never
we'll leave
set
those
foot.
people. We'll leave those people. We don't have a dog in that fight. You know, I don't want to touch them.
No. But I have too many of friends and
No, I understand. But I'm just saying I don't
what
want
I'm
us
just saying.
to mention it because, yeah.
I was also just saying I was using too many words to say I will never set one foot in that motherfucker ever. But Paris, yeah, I've been to Paris.
So I just showed again these people. They built their major cities on dead bodies. What are your thoughts on that?
Um,
The whole
I'm not
civilization is
surprised.
built on death. So I mean, it's not a shocker.
Yeah, it's not a shocker. I'm not surprised, man. I'm not surprised. Well, like what you said, they build, they burn their women, they throw their women in rivers to see if they are witches, and if they knew how to swim, they were witches and they would be burned alive. Yeah, I'm not surprised. There are in other places there is a lot of these bones and these bones and skeletons in buildings in under buildings. There's a lot of that shit in Europe, man.
Yeah, well, again, this is why I say it's very, very it's an interesting thing for me. Baudrillard, one of my favorite philosophers, I think I can't remember the book he wrote about.
Simulacrum, something like that.
No, no, that's simulacrum. No, he had a book on death. Let me just get the title. Baudrillard, um, death. Let me see if that pops up. Um, yes, okay. Let me see. It says Rise of Capitalism. I think it's symbolic exchange. Let me see. Baudrillard, symbolic exchange. I haven't read these things in a while. Um, yes, symbolic exchange and death. And so when I read it, I mean, this is very macabre. Um, right? Look at the
Oh,
front
by the
page.
way, by the way, uh, by the way, what you just came to describe as Wall Street with our people buried there in London, it's the same thing, and quite recent they discovered that there were hundreds of and I remember reading it, or getting to know it, and my first impression was, okay, they killed, when they abolished slavery, they killed all the slaves that they hadn't sold yet. That was my impression of it. So at the market, where there used to be a big slave market, there were hundreds of bones, skeletons of our people in London. I'm talking about London. So just like Wall Street, London is the same thing.
Mm, that's a great point. That's an interesting point. But yeah, I mean, the financial center of the world is not New York. It's actually London, right? We're
Yes,
all on GMT.
yes,
The
ex-
price of gold is set in London. So a
yeah,
whole
and
bunch of
you
stuff,
understand,
you know.
why I had to add it, right? Because the
Of
subject is
course,
occult, right?
the this deep occult. But this is one of the reasons why I love the French, especially the French philosophers. When I first read this book, I was like, man, this is my type of writer. My mentor hated him. My mentor was more Foucauldian, but you know, in this book, it says it leads the reader on an exhilarating tour encompassing the end of Marxism, the enchantment of fashion, symbolism about sex and the body, and the relations between economic exchange and death. Most significantly, the book represents Baudrillard's fullest elaboration of the concept of the three orders of the simulacra, defining the historical passage from production to reproduction to simulation. Right. So, very interesting work. But yeah, when I think about symbolic exchange and death, and I think about it from that occult perspective, the fact that these people are building their major centers of trade on dead bodies is just wow. It's crazy when you think about it. So let me go to Lagos, Nigeria, because now we're going into the second part, and we're almost done. We're gonna wrap up after we touch this, but where we talk about the African colonial districts versus ancient African cities as sites of occultism. So let's look at Lagos, right? So Lagos is supposedly the second most populous city in Africa. Blah blah blah. It was once the capital of Nigeria. Um, as a matter of fact, um, as a matter of fact, let me see something. There's a part, I believe, Ikoyi. Let me click on Ikoyi. They said Ikoyi was built because this is where one of the richest people lived. They said Ikoyi was built on a cemetery. Um, let me see. Now, again, the reason why I mention this is because Jose talked about the African colonial districts. Um, let me see. Built on. Let's see. Spell that wrong. Um, let me see. Okay. All right. I can't find it. But so you can see, the way that Lagos is built. So, right, this is right here. Um, you have Festac, Papa, Surulere, mainland, Snake Island, it's the Atlantic Ocean. So these are where the Portuguese would sail in, and these Europeans would sail in here and grab Africans from African middlemen off the coast, right? So this is how the place looked in 1929. Look how clean it is. I'm sure if you took a picture of this same place now, you'd see all kind of garbage floating in. This water looks clear. People could probably drink from it, could sustain themselves. That's long gone, um, unfortunately. So you can see, even the way it's built, there's no real grid to it. It just looks kind of roughshod. Now, we will compare that to what this gentleman, and I want to hear your thoughts on that. Um, um, so you can see right here, um, there's a gentleman, Ron, I forgot his name. Let me see if it pops up. He wrote a book. Ron Eglash. I'm sure you guys probably have heard of him. But Ron Eglash wrote a book on um, how African villages, even hairstyles and things, are built on the mathematical concept of fractals, right? And so these are like aerial views of African villages, and you can see they're built on these fractal patterns right here, right? Very, very interesting patterns, even the hairstyle and stuff. So you can see all these things and these aesthetics. And you know, so you can see like all kind of Fibonacci ratios and Fibonacci sequences within these patterns and these fractal designs. So part of my issue is that modern African, the average African intellectuals who are trying to uphold these African states, even African architecture. I think I just saw one that was trying to go back to it. They're not looking at these African designs to have, you know, as an African space for interaction, as an African space for life, as an African space for commerce. They're relying on the colonial district. So Tan Jose says that most African cities are pretty much colonial districts. They're like British. They're real estate that the African leaders just maintain. They're like the African leaders are like slumlords. So they do a terrible job of maintaining the property. They keep the tenants fucked up. But as opposed to this fractal concept. So let me sum up everything I'm trying to say. When you look at the European system of building um, their cities on top of the dead, but the African, who back then was using fractals, right? And me and Tan talked about the problem of math is that math is removed from the person and put on a notebook, is disembedded from you. Whereas the math is embedded even within this woman's hairstyle, as you can see right here. Let me zoom in. I don't know if you guys can see it. Maybe I should zoom in. So you guys can see this woman's hairstyle right here. And so it's embedded in her hairstyle, the mathematics, right? And that's also embedded in the village. So do you think that we're not following our occultism by building our cities and our commerce based on our fractals and our mathematics and our science? And we're trying to rebuild African cities without realizing that, hey, if you want to build these African cities like Lagos, that means you have to build them on top of cemeteries and do some sort of occult voodoo like the European is doing. What are your thoughts to that?
No, I'm with you, man. We have to do the fractals, yeah, and Fibonacci and those type of shit. I think you know, we are, as I said before, you know, you live in the reality, and you just lock on to the rest around you that is also real. So everything around us is fractals and Fibonacci, you know, and the holy geometry, right? So that's you just lock into what's already there, because you are a part of that what's already there, right? So this is logic. I mean, us Cape Verdeans, today I touched it, and Cape Verdeans has claimed it, and while Cape Verdean is nothing, right? Us Cape Verdeans, we are Manjak, we are Jola, we are Fula, we are Mandinka, united in those islands before we were brought to Brazil, the Caribbean, and North America, right? So we have a thing that we call batuk, right? And batuk is actually a drum, right? And you can do it with your hands. If you hit one hand, you hit it two times, and the other hand three times, and then you get this noise, right? I hope you can hear it. Right? My right hand is tapping three times in the time that my left hand is tapping two times. So you can tum taka tum taka tum, right? And that's actually a step in the Fibonacci, right? It's very early in Fibonacci, and the banana thing is this batuk, this Mandinka culture, and today I learned that it's also Manjak, is fractal, right? The music is Fibonacci. The culture is Fibonacci. So why are we building Portuguese slash North African style, and why are why are not why are our villages not in the same logic, right? That's, yeah, good point. You know, that shit. The lie is to tap from dead people, right? I hope you have also come to the conclusion that the Western European is the lie, right? So he has to enforce shit. He has to tap off of dead people, right? And we tap off of living things.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. Tan, what are your thoughts on that? What I was saying with, African colonial districts not understanding that the European district is built on dead bodies. That's some sort of occult power that they're deriving, and they're trying to copy the European, not building on dead bodies like the European is, but we have our occult powers of fractals, and we're not trying to build like that. What are your thoughts?
I think that's the only sensible thing you've said all evening.
Again?
Yes, of course. I keep saying that you're missing the point of the whole Pan-Africanism, that we are we practice a different principle, and ours is, if it has to come to it, for me, it's the opposition between life and death, between a culture built on life and a culture built on death, and ours was always built on life. And life, nature, the celebration of humanity and the acceptance of death. Is not to say that we did not, we denied it, but we also accept death as a part of life. But we don't celebrate it. We're not overly, worshipful of it, and we do not celebrate death. We simply accept it as a part of life. So yeah, we have given up, and I think some of your criticisms of Pan-Africanism is the European Europeanness of our people, who have forgotten what it is to be African. If they knew what it was, they would be practicing real Pan-Africanism, which we were doing. And this is why we don't need. You keep saying that, oh, the nation states. We do not need a nation state. We were practicing Pan-Africanism before we even encountered the Europeans. That means that we were living in relative peace with each other. We accepted, not accepted, but yeah, we did accept each other. We tolerated each other, and we lived in relative peace. We did not go to wars, to genocide, and to lay waste to different tribes. We fought for resources, yes, and we fought for perhaps women or other things, but it was for real things. Whereas them, they just fight just to kill and for the fun of it. So Pan-Africanism does not require nationhood. It does not require an enemy or a force. It's simply a practice. And right now, it's not being practiced. That's why it is an ideology. And it's an ideology that people work towards, because what is being practiced right now is that we're worshiping, the gods of death.
Well, I mean, you know, my critique on Pan African um, is not one in which I think if Pan Africanism, if the idea is solid, then my critiques eventually, won't um, won't be as sharp, you know. So the fact that one has to defend it so hard lets me know that I'm doing a great job. But
No, it
hopefully
just
they
means that
can.
you're severely mistaken.
No, hopefully the onus
Okay, let
is
me ask you
on.
this. What does it mean to you? What is your definition of it? Maybe we're talking about different things.
No, I don't do definitions in that sense. Um,
Okay, what does it mean to you then?
I'm not important because remember I told you we only discussed
Oh,
the
yes,
idea.
you are.
Just
That's why
So
we're
just let
listening
just
to
let him
you.
talk, Tanzan. Just let him talk, Tanzan.
so
I'm sitting here with a big smile. Let him talk.
so for me, here's the thing, right? The way it is that if I can pinpoint, so no one is arguing that because this is the Black Pentagram show. Um, I was on a platform where the Somalis and West Africans were going back and forth, insulting. And I told them, I said, hey, I don't have to be a Pan Africanist. But if you were to ask me to choose between a European and a Somali, I'm going to choose the Somali. If you were to ask me to choose between the Somali who's Islamic and the Bangladeshi, I'm going to be with the Somali because at least the Somali is still African. I can engage in their culture, right? I can always marry more than one wife. I can do whatever, those type of things. Cultural complex. That's what I like to use. There's a cultural complex in Africa, which there are enough similarities that a person can move to any region, learn the language, and adapt with the people close enough that within one generation, your children will be from that new locality. My my contention, or where I have, conversations, is like I've told both of you, is that I try and study European history, not because they're so great, right? Um, but to pinpoint what is wrong with European history, and then take that information and now observe what my African people are doing and say, hey, look, do what you want to do, but guess what? What you think you're doing is not so novel and brand new, because what you think you're doing is actually coming from this ideology here, right? And so a perfect example is like you look at China today, people say, oh, the Chinese, but everything they're doing is Marxist, that's German, that's European. They're not doing anything that's ancient Chinese. So they're just doing German ideology with Chinese language or Chinese face. There's nothing ancient Chinese about what they're doing in their state setup. None of that.
Yeah,
They know. Yeah, go ahead.
Falun Gong is even some Christian taste, right?
Yes, right. So, for me, when I hear certain people just, oh, all we need is education, patriotism, and soldiers, and this, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do you know what Europe had to do to create this thing that they used to attack us? It's not a coincidence on an occult level that the so-called most developed nation in the world also is the most murdersome nation worldwide, which is the United States, in terms of
Word.
murders committed.
Do you
That's
know?
not by accident.
Do you know, brother and sister? Do you know what Holocaust means?
No, tell me.
Holocaust is an offer, a sacrifice. Excuse me, a sacrifice that you do as thank you.
Wow. Wow. I didn't know that. I'm going to fact check that. Wow. I had no idea. So
Yeah.
again, this is more occult, you know, understanding to see. And I'm not surprised, because keep in mind, the Nazi party was deep into the occult.
Yes, sir.
Deep into the occult. I mean, we could do
Yes,
another,
I studied
you
that
know,
for a while. He actually sent one of his guys to India to study the connection, and unfortunately, the guy had to made stuff up because he couldn't find what he was looking for. But yeah, Hitler really did try to engage the powers of the
yeah.
state.
And if you think about that in terms of sacrifice, if you think about that, the German machine, and me and Jose talked about this, in terms of industrializing, no country in the world industrialized faster, more efficiently, and better than Germany. They were even better than the United States
Till this
Yeah.
day.
to
Till
this
this
day.
day.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hear Pan Africanists talk about developing Africa, and they want to copy the Chinese, and they
But
want to copy everybody else, I
but
say,
that's
if
not a
that's the
necessary
case,
tenet of it. You can disagree with the methods, but that is not the
no, but
ideological
wait. I
aspect.
know, but Ted, I'm not disagreeing with the idea that Africans should love and support one another. I'm only, again, the ideas behind what they say without them realizing. So when they tell me Japan, or when they tell me China, I say to them, if you're going to go all the way and copy the European, you might as well copy Germany. If you really say this is what we want in industrialized Africa, okay, I don't want it. I'll probably move somewhere else. But if that's what you want, no problem. Be like Germany.
Yep. I
None
agree.
of them have ever
200.
brought up Germany as a model, because Germany is the most developed model. When you see what they were able to do,
I
even
believe
in
it's in
terms
their
of
language.
colony. Yeah, go ahead.
I believe it's in their language. Their words are describing. So as a toddler, you already know the difference between a transport car and a personal car, right? You as a toddler, you understand
Gasdemup, I think I have solved your problem. I think I realize your issue. What you're talking about are not Pan-Africanism. They are the copycats of Pan-Europeanism, and they may have maybe ideological intentions and not even vision, just intentions, and they have copied the wrong ideals. You cannot call those Pan-Africanism because they're not
Tanzan.
following.
Tanzan.
Sorry.
This is the second time that you interrupt me
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
with yeah. That's interrupting me is not the problem, but in this show, it's no issue when someone else has another thought, right? So gas them up. He has this thought about Pan Africanism, and I try to understand him, and not to convince him. You understand what I mean? So
Yeah.
I understand that he is worried about what you just described. He is worried that people that nowadays call themselves Pan Africans, those are actually people that want to turn Africa in another Europe or another North America, right? So that's just it. You
I'm worried
understand?
about
We,
that
we
too.
we don't need
I really am.
we don't need to convince gas them up, right? So
Okay. All right.
you
Okay.
understand? So where I was I think that Germany is so advanced because of their language. You know, as a toddler, you already understand the world around you better than an English or Dutch, especially English and Dutch, because those are not languages; those are curses. You know. But and Japan is a stupid example, you know, because Japan is one big Marshall Plan, right? Japan is
Aha.
Japan is the largest American aircraft carrier.
It's the largest welfare plan. So you look at Japan, right? That's a welfare state. You look at China, that's a welfare state because all of them were given the opportunity to do what? The opportunity to provide goods and services for the American and European state.
Exactly.
They could have easily done the same. Like I tell people all the time, 1971, Nixon could have visited Africa and gave those factories to African governments,
And you know what is a
right?
tragedy also when it comes to Japan? Japan was actually trying to follow the German model. They really worshipped Germany. They even invited the German generals and tried to almost kiss ass to them. And unfortunately, the Germans didn't give them any respect or what they were looking for. And when they didn't get it from them, then they decided to go rogue. But they were actually following the German model, which they knew that was the better one to the American one. So yeah.
Of course, you understand. So that's what I'm saying. When people are saying to build an African state, I'm shocked that no one says Germany because, like I said, you ask yourself, the Germans just arose in Europe within how many years after World War One to the end of World War Two? I mean, they literally turned themselves into a machine like IBM. They became this, you know, and this uniformity, right? This uniform. They really became like a factory system. They could churn out, and the
You,
ideology. Yeah, go
you
ahead,
mentioned
Jose.
IBM. You mentioned IBM, and that's interesting because those tattoos on the arms of the Jews in those camps, that was
Oh, Jose,
They were
Jose,
made
let's
of
not.
the blood
Jose, we don't want to
machines.
touch them. I don't want us to touch those people.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
the
Okay,
IBM and all that
IBM.
was after the card machine. So was the Ford model of Ford actually came to Germany. They had a cross-cultural interaction. Hitler came and saw the factory in Ford, America, and he said, "Oh, this is the wonderful. This is how you should run not just a factory but a country."
Yeah, right. IBM developed the early databases over there. So,
Yes.
so,
So
so
you're right. So this is what was happening. And so after the fall of Germany, a lot of the German scientists end up in
yeah,
Argentina and the
yeah,
United States and vice
but
versa.
still,
Project
it's
Paperclip.
German origin. It's German origin. So
Of course.
those IBM came to tap off of the machine, right?
Yes. Yes.
They
You know,
tapped off the machine.
so this is what why for me I'm saying that the African project today is one in which there is a confusion, right? If the African nation state is to take hold, then I think then they have to tap into European occultism. They have to build their cities on top of, you know, dead bodies. No, I'm serious. They have to build their cities on dead bodies. They have to look at how Germany destroyed the people of Germany and built this machine, this German machine, and build this African machine. And let's see, how long that will last. And you will get a strong African state, I guarantee you. But if we're not going to do that, then perhaps we can look at the ways our villages were created within these fractal patterns, these geometric, these Fibonacci sequences that allowed us to thrive. And they have occult meaning within them too. And if you look at Africans today, none of us are living or giving our energy, right? The Western body, the Western state is occultism. So we give our energy, our money, the flow, right? The currents, the liquidity that we give it to the Western state, which gives it life. None of us are when in Africa, most people are trying to live in the colonial district, the cities, instead of giving life to the ancient villages that can come back to life and be empowered and protect us and start something anew. None of us are looking to do that. So I wanted us to launch on to the final topic, but if you guys want to add anything before we get there, because we're going to talk about maritime law, modernity, and how water navigates global trade versus how internal land trade built African empires. So, if you guys want to add anything before I get on to that?
No, I wanna get on. I wanna get on. Maybe Tencent wanna add
No,
before we.
I agree. I'm good. That was good.
Maritime. Let's get into
Let's get
maritime
into it. The next one.
because I come from no, I don't come from. I come from the Cape Verde Islands, but I've been living for 50 years in the country that is under the sea level. So let's go, gas them up. Let's go.
Okay, tell me if you guys hear that.
I don't hear it. I can't hear it, but maybe it's my connection. I believe it's yours.
No, no, it's not. It's not. I haven't. I'm gonna do it now. Fair use, by the way. Fair use. Don't come after me. This little bitty channel. But let's listen.
Well, let me give you another. It just strikes me. Let me give you a quick example about the
Maritime
maritime
law.
law, the law of water, the law of the sea. Money is water by law. So when a ship, this is why all ships are female by law. All ships, rocket ship, sailing ship, airship, it doesn't matter. If it's a ship, it's female.
Right.
Because the captain always refers to his ship as she.
Right.
She's a good ship, or she's done this. Why she? Because she delivers the product.
Right. The
Without
vessel.
she, there is no product, right?
It's a vessel. It's a
Of
whole. It's a
course, of
container,
course, it
like
is a
like the
vessel. So
feminine.
is your body. It's a vessel that produces a product.
Right.
So when the ship pulls into harbor, uh, it stops, and where it parks is called its berth. It's berthing a ship, or she sits in her berth. And every item on that ship, coming out that ship, is a money. It's money changing hands.
Right.
It came in on water. So it's called. So every piece has to have what is called a certificate of manifest,
Uh-huh.
because she is sitting in her birth. That's why when you were born,
I had a birth
you
certificate.
had your mother's water broke. You were inside a container of water. Her water broke, and you came out, and therefore you have to have a birth certificate
Wow.
there, and it's got to be signed.
By the way, before you were born, the your father inserted his penis right into your mother's vaginal canal, and he released semen right into your mother's canal. But let's keep listening.
By the dock, because that's where the ship is sitting. The dock is where the ship
That
sits.
is funny.
So once you begin to see how the words and terms are all based on maritime admiralty, the law of water, the cash flow, the liquid asset.
But is that just in English? The dock, the water?
Yeah, of course. But of course, it goes all the way back to the English or British domination of the seas.
Oh.
And so when the British began to dominate the seas, the Knights Templar Masonic Order of the Knights Templars, who have been in the middle of Asia, came back into Western Eastern Europe, brought all of these concepts, and it was developed into a commercial system of words and terms and symbols which are used in courts and government and corporations. Your body as a corporation. No, that's a whole story. We could talk for hours on this, but your body is a corporation.
Of cells, you mean?
No. It's called, and by law, your body, your physical body is a corporation. And so when you die, you're a corpse. Because when you're living, you're a corporation. You are a business. And hanging out with that person is bad business.
Right.
Or who I hang out with is none of your business.
Right.
Because your body is a business.
Wow.
And so you say, well, what you're doing with her or him is bad business.
Right.
But of course, if you get married and she's very wealthy, you say she's of good stock, right? Words and terms are based on maritime admiralty, the law of water. And so that's why when you go into a court, you have a fence and a gate. The people sit out here and the judge sits inside. The gate is called a floodgate. When you go through the canal, you have a floodgate.
Right.
So when you're sitting out here, you're in the law of the land. The judge has no control or no jurisdiction over the people sitting out here. No jurisdiction whatsoever.
Right, because they're outside the gate.
That's outside the gate.
Right.
That's on land.
Right.
But when you walk past that gate, now you're in hot water. And someone's gonna have to bail you out.
Bail, yeah.
Okay.
Bail. Did you write a book about all these
No,
maritime
I've just been studying it for 48 years.
Wow.
But it's fascinating because when you understand that the whole subject is so large, and it would take hours and I'd have to go back to square one and walk through all the words and terms that are used in law and courts and commerce.
Yeah.
For you to understand how pervasive this concept of water is on the earth.
Wow.
The law of water, maritime admiralty, it's an extraordinary story about how governments rule the world. And unless you understand this, you're never going to figure out what's going on. Look at it. When you walk into a courtroom and they call your name, you get up and you put your hand on the gate and you open the gate. The moment you put your hand on the gate, by international law, you of your own volition have opened yourself up to maritime admiralty law, because you were on the law of the land. As long as you don't touch that gate and go through it, you haven't opened the floodgate. Now, once you open the floodgate, there's a piece of wood on top of that gate, and it's called the bar, and you're not licensed to pass the bar.
Right.
So what you've done is you've opened the floodgate, but you weren't licensed to pass the bar.
So what does that mean?
So that means that you are dead. You are now dead. Once you touch that, you are dead.
Because you're no longer in control of
That's right. You are dead. Well, you're considered to be a dead man. That's why the attorney has to speak for you. He has to represent you.
Why are you dead? Because
you went into the deep water and you died. You drowned.
Because you weren't licensed. Because you weren't.
Right. You were not licensed to pass the bar. And the bar represents a sandbar and the ocean. But the bar.
So in that part, in the American courtroom, there's a part in the courtroom known as the well, and if you pass that well, your body's considered to be drowned. but it's almost done. Let's keep going.
Is what the attorneys are licensed to pass, but you're not. So the point being is that when you open that gate of your own volition, you are considered by law to be a dead man.
Really?
That's why you cannot talk to the judge, because dead people don't talk to judges. So you need an attorney who is your mouthpiece. He speaks for you because you're dead.
Well, should we do away with courts so people can get their lives back?
I would think that what you want to do is understand how the system works.
Oh, and avoid it.
Well, avoid it if you can. Well, let me give you.
So that was the end of the video. So let me sum up the premise of it. When you look at the European system, and I wrote my thesis on this. Basically, maritime law um, is used all throughout the English language. Like you said, partnership, all these things. Your liquid. That's why anything you buy, right, is for sale, right, like a boat. English language is it's a spell. It's an occultic language,
Don't
so
forget
it's
the
for
dock
sale.
to dock
Of
the ship.
course,
You're
you
in the
know,
dock of the
and that's why you need your documents, right?
Mhm.
These are
Yeah.
your documents that you need. Um, your bill of sale, right? Your bill of lading, and all these things. So the maritime thing is all throughout the language there, and they needed world trade because that's why when people say Africa has natural resources, I said no, that's bullshit. This is just my opinion. I said because before the European came, until we encountered them, that's when we realized we had natural resources. Until we encountered them, that's when we realized we were black. That's when we realized we were Moors, as the article I showed earlier. That's when we realized we were, infidels. Until we encountered these people. So, basically, um, they need world trade in order to survive. I'm going to quickly put up um, Wallerstein world system. So he's like the foremost scholar, Emmanuel Wallerstein, even though some people, disagree a little bit. But his approach, I think, is interesting. Uh, you know, well, let me see if I can get the book. Um, where's the book? Where's the book? Okay, right here. So you got these two books. You have the Modern World System, Mercantilism, right, and blah blah World System Analysis. So mercantilism and the consolidation of the European world economy, 1600 to 1750. So, you know, these people went around the world forcing everyone to trade and do business with them. So when the Chinese said no, they made them drug addicts, took over Hong Kong. The Japanese, Commodore Perry, blew down their ports. Um, they always wanted us to deal with their goods. So that's why I'm not a fan of a lot of things when they say, "Oh, Africa, we can easily trade," and that. No, we can't because Nkrumah, when he tried to do that with cocoa, the Europeans just basically, they destroyed the price of cocoa. They flooded the market, and he was bankrupted. So when you compare that to, and this is where Pan Africanism can shine very, very good. Um, when you compare that to the internal trade, the fractal trade, the trade that was based on fractals, right? So let me type in Timbuktu trade routes. Let's see.
I want to take it. I want to take it to another level, but
I know. I'm gonna
curious.
let you
Let's.
go, Jose. Yeah. As soon as I'm done, just give me 2 more seconds, Jose. Um. So let's look at this. So you can see, for example, this was, you know, the trade routes that created, and this is just West Africa. I know if I type in trade routes for East Africa, which I'm going to do next, um, let me zoom in so you guys can see it. So you guys can see these are trade routes all over West Africa, right here, which at the time, this entire region was called Western Sudan, right? Now, this whole part was called Western Sudan. This was the other part of Sudan. So almost this whole region was known as Sudan. Um, and this is why the Berlin Conference is interesting because they purposely separated Sudan. That's what they did during the Berlin Conference. They separated the Sudans. So you can see these are the trade routes. Let me type in East African trade routes. Give me a second. So again, you can see on the eastern border of Africa, you can see right here, Zanzibar, Kilwa, Mogadishu, right? All these places, Sliwa, right? All these places are where Africans were trading, right? Again, coastal, but intra-Africa trade. And that's what built, because this trade right here, you see this right here. Let me see if I can, um, let me see something. Um, Hold on. Can you guys still see my screen? Okay. So the whole premise, this is good right here. This one, this is a good one. So you can see this right here. Zanzibar, Mombasa, Kilwa. So this is East Africa. I'm sure there were more trade routes there. But my whole premise is that none of these places do you see them pulling out so-called natural resources. They're not, mining for um, uh, what's the stuff they put in the cell phones, bauxite and all that other stuff that they're mining for now in the Congo and all these places. And they were creating thriving, so-called empires, thriving networks where people were able to quote unquote build wealth through fractal trade, right? Intra Africa or African trade. And ever since we've encountered the European, we've abandoned that and we're caught in their occult game of selling our resources to them, getting pennies on the dollar, whether it's them or now the Chinese. And we're not ready to live with what we have within our means and focus on intra African trade to make ourselves wealthy. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So the maritime law that the European created for his nation state, as opposed to the internal intra-Africa trade that kept the African and sustained the African to create numerous empires all across the continent. Whereas today, with all the global trade that is available to us, we don't have one example of an African nation state or trade, nothing that can show success. And so my beef is that, or my contention is that we need to abandon that and go back to our trade routes, trade with what we have, live with what we have. I'll stop there. So I'm going to let Tan go first, and then Jose. So Tan, what do you think? Tan, are you there? I think Tan may have stepped away or muted her mic. Go ahead, Jose.
Um, you know that the Netherlands, the lowlands, Paiba, right, which also means the lowlands, is for a large part below sea level, right? So you know what that means, right? After all that you have mentioned, after what is Jordan Maxwell is saying, you know what that means, right? The law, you got the law of the land and you got the law of the sea. Then the law of the sea is fluid because a ship docks in this country with this tax system, and then it goes to another country and has to change its law, right? It has to adapt to the law of that new country. So it's the law is fluid in the law of the sea. So the Netherlands have a large part under sea level. They have a new Amsterdam spell, and I did never understood why it was so important, and we should know it, and it was blah de blah, and it changed everything, and that and so and so forth. And then I saw Jordan Maxwell, and boom, I got it. The law in the Netherlands, there are great parts where the law of the sea counts on land, but that land is on the sea level, so technically that land is not land, it's the bottom of the sea. The ICC, right? The ICC, the court for war crimes and bullshit, is in the part that is below sea level. So it's in the part.
Really?
So it's in the part that has the New Amsterdam Pile, the New Amsterdam measurement,
Wow.
right? So ICC is in that part that is below sea level, right? So you got so you got if you drive a car, right? Certain bills, how do you call it when you cross the line in a car? Fine, right? Certain fine are under one law, and the others are under other laws. Certain fines, you have a big M at the right top. You have a big M, and that's Mulder law, Mulder vet, right? And those bills, those fines, if you get in, if you don't pay them immediately, and they have to take you to court, the court is not in that section that is below sea level. It's in Leeuwarden in Friesland. You have to I have to drive 300 kilometers because there the land is above sea level. So it's the law of the land. Muldervet is law of the land, and most immigrants live where the law is fluid, because when you're black, you get this punishment. When you're white, you get that punishment. The law is fluent. You understand? So again, let's go back to ICC, right? So so in the ICC, the law is also fluid, right? An African leader is is uh is has to come. Uh, an African lead. It's an African leader's turn. They punish him this way. It's a Yugoslavian war criminal. They punish him that way. You understand? It's fluid. It's not by chance that ICC is there in the
Mm,
Netherlands.
that's interesting.
And by the way, you have two. One at the airport, Schiphol, and Schiphol is way under sea level, and the other one is at Scheveningen in the Hague.
That is very fascinating that they kept the
Speaking of occult,
ICC court
speaking of
below
occult,
the sea. That is very fascinating. So, what do you say to the you know, the European wants us to do global trade, but no African has been successful in global trade, but intra-African trade built some of the strongest empires and generated the most wealth in Africa. What do you say to that?
Uh, I say to that, how many African captains, how many African, how do you call those company? How do you call those companies that have ships? How many of those companies are African?
The ocean liners.
Yeah, yeah. In Dutch, you have one word for it: rederij. Rederij. A, 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 a rederij is a company
Okay,
that has ships.
I don't think that many. I don't think we have that many ships.
You understand? You probably know that captains and the second the skipper is I believe it's called skipper, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Cap, captains and skippers most of the time are Freemasons
I wouldn't be surprised.
because they are operating in fluid law,
Hmm.
so they have backdoor contracts, backdoor deals, backdoor laws.
Wow.
I'm dealing with you this time. I'm dealing with the other one that time.
Hmm. No, that's interesting. Taryn, are you back? I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yes, it was very interesting. I say that if you try to copy somebody at what they're already good at and you're just starting, your only hope is to, play catch up and, and be maybe a respectable fifth position. So we really don't have a chance if all we're going to do is follow, what they do instead of recreating from scratch our very beginning. Um, for a good maritime book, maritime and literary and philosophical and all that, I think everybody should do a reading of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. It's a terrible book, but it's a very good book. It goes over a lot of some of what we're saying. That's all. I wanted to be brief, so
No, no. I mean, I want you to expound further about the premise that I'm saying is that we had intra-African trade that created all these things that we talk about that we're so proud of that Africa created. But international trade has not benefited Africa. International trade was the slave trade. International trade is the palm oil trade. International trade is the date trade, right? International trade has not necessarily benefited Africa, but intra-Africa trade has benefited us. Why do you think we're not trading along those ancient trade routes, living within those fractals based on our own occult power and our own occult technology? And when these conversations are had, why do people somewhat either ignore them or don't pay attention to them? What's going on? How can we make these things perhaps digestible to the ideology of the African?
well, it's because we define and this is why I always go to definitions. We define progress and modernity in terms of, being westernized. So if you're telling people to go to the old roots, that to them sounds like you're going backwards. People want to progress, people want to go forward. So that's also why I always have to look at how we're defining things. We could be arguing about, the same thing and just having different meanings. So for me, somebody could say, "Oh, yes, I care about, I'm a Pan African," but what is your ideology and what is your practice? Because somebody could be ideologically so, but in practice they're not, and the opposite. So I think that. We don't really give ourselves that credit. I think we say we have lost the war and therefore let us copy the victors, and that only works if you have a governing ideology, if you have something that's greater than just imitation. And what we have right now, we're simply imitating, but we don't have that vision. And then some people have the vision, but they have no idea about the practical aspects of it. So I think that that's where we go wrong, that we're copying something we don't really understand, and we don't understand why these things were put in place. We don't understand why they do what they do. We just copy them. At least if you're going to copy knowing why it is that you want a railroad from Cairo to the Cape, if that's what you want. But we don't even look for the reasons behind what they do, let alone the reasons why we do what we do. So yeah, that's the problem. We don't understand what we're copying and why. We just do it because we assume that theirs is the modern and ours is the backwards.
So let me ask you this question. I go to Kenya or I go to Cape Verde, and I tell an the lay person or I tell the educated person, hey, listen, the European system, the Western system is based on maritime law. What do you think they would say to this? We explain to them, partnership, friendship, docks, these seamen going through the canal. 9 months later, there's a birth, right? What do you think they would say to this?
I think it's genius. It's like, whoa, really? I didn't know that. That is so cool. And they would be just in more awe than, they were before.
It sounds like fractals and universal laws. There is something universal to those to that concept. So, some connection to nature, nurture.
Hmm. We don't
That's
really
interesting.
understand what we're imitating. I say that's what um, that's what the problem is. If we would be good at international trade if we understood, the history, if we understood the principles behind it, if we understood the players, but we don't understand any of that, and so all our best attempts are simply going to fall flat.
I will end with this. I said something earlier, and I'm gonna end with this. So, because you mentioned something, and let me reduce the zoom. So, again, just looking at the beautiful thing about words, um, Jose mentioned that Holocaust is seen as a sacrifice, the meaning, right? That's phenomenal. It's crazy when in terms of the meaning, not that what happened to people. I don't want them to get
There
at
was
me.
another one called Holodomor. That was the Ukrainian famine. So it was
Oh,
12.
wow. So it's two. I didn't know. But, it's interesting that that word means sacrifice, offering. Just in the same way, again, these people are burning their witches, right? Again, it's not a coincidence that the most developed country in the world, so-called developed country, has the most murders. These people are just killing themselves. Their energy, their spirit, their blood spilling on the land is going to who, right? It's going to who?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a coincidence that the richest, most powerful men go to a small place somewhere where they're burning an owl, and
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yep,
So
we know.
that's what's going on there. But look at this right here. It says, Jose, look at this. It says London ritual dating from 1919 sets price of gold. This is Reuters. So
Wait a minute, London,
I'm gonna zoom in.
a
We're gonna
London
read this
ritual,
article,
London ritual, motherfucker.
and then we'll be
Everything
done.
is ritual. Everything. I stopped even movies. The stock market. All of it is a massive big ritual.
Yes, you understand. So this is my thing with the African. The African doesn't understand modernity.
We
And that's
don't.
why I say the Western state is occultism. Rationalism is occultism. Logic is occultism. Because what they've created is a system that they present to us as if it's normalized.
Okay, I got a
And
counter.
we don't realize that it's occultism.
I have a
Mhm.
counter to that, bro.
Hmm.
One of the early names, and it's still an alternative name for Black Pentagrammar, is ideologic, the I God logic. You close your eyes and that what you imagined, right? Imagination, ideologic is to counter that. So you're countering, you're counting on the God in you.
Mm. Well, I think most people don't. They're not looking for the God in them. They're looking for the God outside.
Yeah, of
So
course, because we're locked into these worldviews of what a god is. That's a gray old
yes,
white man in the clouds, right? But
exactly.
no, but no, it's this infinite darkness that you quote unquote see when you close your eyes.
Well, I mean, you mentioned darkness. I'm sure Tan. What element has six protons, six electrons, and six neutrons?
Carbon.
Tan, you there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yo, so
Yes,
that the element carbon has six protons, six electrons, six neutrons, right?
yes, yes. The
Which
666.
is 666, which is the triple blackness, which
Mm.
is black people. So the devil is carbon, but we're all carbon-based life forms. So are we all devils?
Well,
You
well,
know?
carbon is
But
physics. Carbon is physics. So carbon is what we have. It's subject to what we are.
no, it's interesting. So now let's look at this. So it says twice a day, representatives of five banks pick up the phone to trade physical gold and arrive at the London fixing price, which then, so yeah, twice a day, representatives of five banks pick up the phone to trade physical gold and arrive at the London fixing price, which then becomes a benchmark for gold around the world. So as the clock in the vast Barclays Capital Trading Room in London ticks towards 3 p.m., the bank head of spot gold trading, Booker, joins a conference call with the four other banks who take part in the fixing. The chairman from Deutsche Bank suggests an opening price and Booker relays it to his trading room and customers. Booker and other participants say whether they are buyers or sellers at that price, and the chairman adjusts the price until the buyers and sellers are in balance. It usually takes between 5 and 15 minutes to fix the price, longer when the market is volatile. So since 1919, they've been fixing the price of gold. So if you are a trader, or sorry, if you're a miner in the Congo, or if you're in the Ghanaian coast, and you find this big piece of gold, you don't even determine what the price of gold will be. You don't determine that. A bunch of white boys in London sit down there and tell you what the price of gold will be. Yet these are the same people who will preach to us free markets and economics. Free markets, free markets, free markets. From the Milton Friedman Chicago School to um, the Austrian School of
Yeah,
Economics,
economics are just paid thinkers. They're paid to just justify, to give it a nice shiny name, and to justify the nonsense they're doing behind the scenes. That's what
which is no different than what that papal bull, the church, was
yeah.
doing to justify the nonsense that Isabella was saying, which is what Kant and these philosophers justified what the secular state was doing. So, this is the occult games that are being played. So I just said, let me show that I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to be wrapping up. I'm going to let Tan and Jose touch base with their thoughts. We're going to start with Jose. Um, and we will, yeah. So Jose, what, anything you want to add? What was, something that you learned, something you want us to go check on, just anything. What's your thought process?
Um, we're dealing with ego in flesh, and we have to be very serious. We have to go to war with this thing, and And the danger is that we operate from ego too, and then we will be our own enemy. It's consciousness is God. God is consciousness. Close your eyes, and there's the infinity. We are in His image. The the black pentagram. The largest star in the sky that makes these suns and star systems pale. So they the largest star in the sky makes those stars and star systems look tiny, but still, if you close your eyes, and that largest star in the sky fits in your head, right? And that's consciousness. So with consciousness and creativity, we must that's where we must stay, right? In this I Deo logic, in this I God uh, system, must we defeat ego, these egos, these clumps of flesh, driven by ego instead of consciousness, because you are human when you are conscious, and you are the devil when you are not, right? So this is a thought that I'm developing. It's old, but right now I think we have to take action. And if this war is coming, right? So these egos are destroying the world, right? And in the meantime, it's not only Europeans. There's a lot of our people also messy, right? In personality disorders, or just greedy and blind consumers that cannot escape the physical world to have instead of to be, right? So I think it's about time that we pick up our minds, right? And start countering the attack on what it is to be in God's image, a human being. We really need to apply the God. We really need to apply the God in us. It's becoming. It's about that time. That's what I wanted to say. Maybe it's vague, but I know, and I hope you understand what I'm saying.
No, no, definitely understand what you're saying. You need to tap within that energy source that's inside. Like you said, close your eyes and free your mind, free your soul, free everything, because that energy is within you, and you have to build it and use it and utilize it. I definitely understand what you're saying.
Infinite
Um,
creativity.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that word in Brazil they have Exumare, which is infinite, crossroads. So Tan, what are your your views? Because you're this is your first time on the Black Pentagrammer show, so just your opinions, anything you want to add. What are your thought process? What came to mind today, and anything you want to let us know?
For me, I always start with definitions. I don't think that we can go anywhere if we don't define our meanings. I always say that people argue about things they really don't know about or they haven't defined. So you're arguing this is red and this is yellow to somebody who is colorblind. You could be there all day. So for me, once we know what we're talking about, then we can proceed. And most of the time, people, go straight to the argument without even defining what the terms are. So, and languages is something that can have multiple definitions. It can be clear or ambiguous. But let's say, even when it comes to the term savage, one thing that we're not good at is um, taking hold of definitions of terms. If somebody says the word, savage or superstitious, you automatically imagine somebody running around in a forest, chanting some voodoo nonsense. You don't think of somebody in a business suit, writing a check and doing all this very
Fixing the price of gold.
yes. Exactly. So, we sort of haven't defined our terms properly, and so we're still under the arrest of that ignorance. And That's why I said Heart of Darkness is a brilliant, brilliant book. Joseph Conrad. And that's why somebody who speaks a different language is or sometimes better able to understand that language because they know the contrast. If you only speak one language, that's the only, you cannot contrast it to something else, you know. Even if you see the differences, you know, what the maritime language in English is, it doesn't strike you as particularly different because that's the only language that you know. So Joseph Conrad was Polish and he actually knew English better than most Englishmen, as usually is the case. But even when he spoke in the Heart of Darkness, he referred to the Congo, which was the heart of the darkness of the continent. But the double meaning of that is he was actually searching for a man named Kurtz, Kurtz, and the Kurtz himself was a very corrupt man who was in Africa, who was trading in slaves and ivory. So the heart of darkness could both be, you know, the Congo, which is the heart of the continent, the dark continent, or it could be the heart of the dark man, you know, the man Kurtz who is trading in all these evil things, and yet he is trading in the name of civilization and civilizing the natives. So words are very important, and words do cast a spell. And in order to cast off the spell is to actually realize firstly their power and their meaning, because people simply use words without really knowing what they mean. And the second aspect of it is the ritualized aspect of logic. Logic is also a spell, because logic simply tells you a spell is just a and a ritual is just a prescribed steps towards a certain result. You know, if you add 1 + 1 = 2, or if you have x² + y², or you have BODMAS, it simply is the steps that you take to get to the answer that you want. So everything is a ritual, and if you don't understand that you're participating in a ritual, you become the victim of that ritual. If you understand what you're doing, then you can work on it. And you wouldn't think that somebody who is very logical would also be at the same time, you know, superstitious and ritualistic, but that is really what usually happens. Once you become very logical, you actually realize that the world is a very ritualistic place. So logic and ritual actually go together, and that's why people are surprised, you know, that Newton was heavily into this esoteric stuff. You know, Euler and all these people, they had deep belief, not just they did not separate science from their beliefs in, you know, the deity or whoever. And in fact, even the regular deity was not enough for them. They wanted the deeper knowledge of it. So the more logical you get, the more ritualistic you become. And it's the same thing, you know, with the Germans, you know, who would think that this efficient logic machines would actually be worshipping or looking for some, you know, underlying cause of humanity. But that's what they were. They were actually trying to find that, you know, the philosophical stone or the hidden the occultic power behind all life. And that goes for the Russians as well. Everybody, you know, you can go into it in more detail, but if just for entertainment, the one of the best movies that portrays this is Hellboy. I think it's Hellboy 1, where they're looking, or the Steven Indiana Jones, the Crystal Skull. I don't know if you've seen that one, but either one of those
Yeah, I've
movies.
seen them. Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah, so either one of them, you know, really do give a brief light into the logic slash ritual connection. So yeah.
No, those are excellent points. Both of you guys hit home. I'll end with this to say, the Babalawos in Nigeria, the medicine men, they have a saying. They say that uh, a sacrifice is more powerful than a ritual. I'm going to say that again. A sacrifice is more powerful than a ritual. And I'll get you guys' thoughts on this, and then we'll close out. We'll end it. Um, when you look at the evidence or the things that I've shown today, where the European system, they're, you know, sacrificing their people, um, sacrificing their women, uh, you know, burning them as witches. They're building their cities of commerce on top of dead bodies. The amounts of, you look at the UK, you've banned guns, but there's an evil spirit there that instead of shooting, they must kill themselves. Now they're using knives. They must die. Blood must spill on that land, in the United States, so they must shoot themselves. So that's a sacrifice. And
Right. Yeah. Continue.
yeah, so that's a sacrifice. And the ritual is the things that they do, like the Pledge of Allegiance and all this other stuff, singing the national anthem. African colonial districts are not built on sacrifice. Tan's point about life, right? Our fractal villages are not built on burial grounds. They're not built on sacrifice. They're built on ritual. So when people tell me, oh, we lost when we fought the European, it's not just what we see with our eyes. As my grandfather used to say, what you're seeing is not your ordinary eye. A wise old man once told me, he said, if you think you've seen everything that you've seen, then you really haven't seen at all. Meaning that there's still things deeper than what we're seeing. So to me, when we fought this European, um, understand that they came with a lot of sacrificial energy behind them, and we came with ritualistic energy behind us. And even still, they had to use our own people to help colonize us before we were finally defeated. They had to use our own people to help with the slave trade. So our rituals, even without the sacrificial energy, was still strong enough to contend with them. And so we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves and throw away our culture and our ritualistic power to embrace their um, sacrificial power because we think our ritualistic power failed. No, we had a lot of sellouts and coons who engaged with the Europeans. So just want to hear both of your quick thoughts on that, and then we'll close out. Tan, I want to hear what you say, and then we'll end with Jose.
For me, actually, I would say that sacrifice is the highest form of ritual. The only difference is that the person being sacrificed does not know that they're participating in it. And I'll close with that.
That's a deep one. That's very deep. We'll I'll think about that during the week. Sacrifice is the highest form of ritual. Very deep. Jose, what are you leaving us with? Jose, you sleeping? Jose,
It seems we lost him at the end.
I think Jose may have went to
Oh,
sleep.
I'm talking with the mic out, but it's
Oh,
true.
sorry.
It's true. I'm becoming a bit slow.
Yeah,
So
no, we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. So, what are your last thoughts?
yeah, my last thought was what I was what I was daydreaming a minute ago, but that's another word. It's yeah. What do we have to do? How does it manifest itself? Our counter, or maybe we don't even have to counter. We just do what we used to do, or we have to. I believe we have to counter the source, and that's this flesh, this ego that became flesh. We have to clean up shop. You know what I mean. We have to
No, no, that's a great point. Very
we have
good point.
we have to clean up shop because there's cockroaches in the shop, or rats and all kinds of filthy things in the shop, and we have to clean up shop.
Mm.
And start close the shop, clean up shop, and then open it up again as in the universal law. So no maritime law against the law of the land, but just the universal law, just how it works. Like a tree also follows a law. Like
Mm.
like rabbits produce. How do you call it? Produce when they make.
Bunny.
You know what?
Bunnies. They produce baby bunnies. The rabbits make bunnies.
Yes, yes, yes. Co-produce. Co-produce.
Okay, okay. Copulate. Is that the
Uh,
word you're looking for?
no, no, no. They build a family, and those children get children, and there's a word
Procre-
with anyways, how rabbits create families, how lions create families, how trees grow, how fishes operate, and maintain balance.
Mm,
We have to fit. We have to fit in the universe to 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 get those to 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 um, to to become dynasties, right, these ancient dynasties that lasted for thousands of years. Why was that possible? Because we were one with nature.
mm.
you know
That's it.
the- these these Fibonacci and these pyramids with all the math in it. It's why is that? We did speak the language of the universe, obviously, and that's why we could maintain these dynasties. Now we call it dynasties, but probably it's just like day and night, right? The forthcoming of day and night. The most normal thing. It was the
Yeah.
most normal thing to be into nature.
Mm.
Nowadays we call
Well,
it dynasties
well,
because
Jose,
because
I don't want us to go
Europeans.
too long because I know
Yes.
everybody has to go. So, um,
Yeah, that was it. Actually, that was it. I was
okay,
repeating.
okay. So I want to thank Tan for joining us. Um, if you join us next week, all of you who are live, you can join us next week. We'll have another interesting show. Of course, my co-host Jose, always a pleasure. So thank you all, and
Thank you
wish you
too.
guys the best. Tan, you guys have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Peace.
All right.
Peace.